good. This is good. This is good. So yeah, this should be in. Yeah.
Could double check it on me.
Do not. I don't even know. Yeah. So
the best is when I get to see them is usually when they do nighttime Zoom.
we should go to YouTube.
Yeah, we could probably.
I've never gone to YouTube. I've never even gone to this channel.
They say it was 9 and 9. And they're more active. More better time for lunch, I guess. I don't know. A lot of animals just get active. They don't want turtle time. So they get more active at night. They're kind of in the morning, but they're sleepy in the afternoon, and they kind of get active again. And now that I just assume animals take schedule we get. I know, but.
Okay, so what you see, oh cool, we can see it right here. Alright, so if you want to start manning, I think we're good. Okay everybody, welcome. I'm going to be doing some gouache master studies tonight, and I'm going to zoom in and show you some of these ones that I just did. These are all 1 hour paintings, and they were done for the online school for phase 3 gouache. And so I did, let's see here, I'm going to pan up here a little bit and just kind of show you a few of them. So I started with Frazetta, and I did, let's see, I did about an hour on each. So you can see here as we pan over, those are my Frazettas. And you can see, and I'll try to zoom in a little bit on it and show you. You can see some of the subtlety on them. There's a little bit of airbrush I did on them, but not a lot. So that's kind of what they look like. And then I went down and did also a line of Leyendeckers. You can see 3 Leyendeckers starting from the left to the middle. And then you got 2 Rockwells below that, which are these guys right in there. And then below that we have Elfgren. And we've done 3 Elfgrens. Okay, so there's the 3 of those. At the very bottom we have a Gibson and a coal that were both in vented color. So that's these bottom ones down here. And again, you are working from a linear ink, converting it to paint, and then inventing the color on top of it is a really great exercise. Very challenging, but a fun one to do. And then you've got the little Gibson down here, which is kind of warped because of the angle I'm at. But I'm going to go ahead and pull that aside. I'm going to pan back out so you can see the full page. I'm doing that on TV illustration board gray. Kind of hard to find. I haven't really looked for it for years. I used to use it in the movie industry when I was doing movie posters, but I have not used it. I had a few scraps left over. So that's what I was doing those on. Tonight I'll be working on more of a 110 crescent, which is what you've got here. You can read comments too over there if you want, Jeff. We're going to get ready to move it here in a second. So go ahead and send questions in if you got them. Here's some Cornwells up in the top corner that are kind of being covered by my reference. First reference I'm going to do is the Frazetta here. And you can see, all you guys know this image. Great head, great body, I mean just great anatomy, everything's really wonderful on it. So that's what I will be actually painting, the head on that. And I'll give myself about an hour to do that. So when I look down here, here's my preliminary drawings. And they're done with NH click pencil, you know, just a nice mellow pencil. And again, you can kind of see how the drawing looks before I start. And it just gets the big graphic shapes. There's really not that, that much detail or anything because you're going to be covering it in paint momentarily. Over here is a Cornwell. It's kind of cool, and it's a black, white, and orange Cornwell, which I used to love when he would do that in his vignettes. Up above, we've got 3 Leyendeckers. I'm only going to do the middle one, the girl. So I'm going to do this head right in here a little later because I wanted to put 1 female in there because they're really challenging to do. The other 2 I did on the other page, and they were originally drawn to be done on this page, and I decided to use the gray board. So anyway, that kind of gives you a rundown of what we're going to be accomplishing tonight, or I'm going to be trying to. These will be an hour each, and I'm going to go ahead and move the camera over my shoulder, and we're going to get positioned so that you can see me as best we can with this setup. So let me just bear with me for a second as I get everything ready to go. So I'm working on illustration board again, and I have it clipped to a board. I've got a little light up here just to illuminate it a little bit so you guys can see a little better. And my palette, so my brushes are going to be Robert Simmons, different sizes from flats to rounds, mostly rounds I use, but you may have a preference for others, the flats and the filberts and stuff like that. I don't use a lot of filberts, but that's the run of my brushes, right? And they're fairly cheap. The white sable, Robert Simmons, burnt sienna with a gold back on them, and those are the ones I'm going to use most. And I'll probably use a 2 and a 1, ones, 2s, and things like of that sort the most. So I'm looking for my brushes here, and I'm going to lay out the ones that I think I'm going to use the most here. And the rest of them I'll put to the side. Oh yeah, and actually let me show you my mixing surface too. I have an airbrush, old school Iwata, which I know a lot of you guys are digital and don't use this stuff anymore, but you may want to learn just because it's nice to be able to do originals. And so here's my palette. Can you see that, Jeff? So I got Jeff, one of my students, helping me here. That's my palette that I'm going to be using. And basically it's a warm, cool palette, just like you would in oil or acrylic or any others. Warm, cool yellow, warm, cool red, warm, cool blue, and then some supplemental earth tones and some supplemental greens, and then black and white. The supplemental colors are really up to the individual. They're very particular. So I wouldn't worry about that. But what blue you use, what red you use, these are going to be somewhat individual. And color is relative. So we're not going to get into a lot of color theory on these little demos that we're doing. That would be more something that would be covered in the online thing or something, or in our school. But anyway, watch how I bend color, watch how I have fun with these things. But this is my palette. This is a butcher tray, so it's metal, and it mixes the gouache really well. It doesn't mix very well in plastic. It doesn't mix well on certain surfaces. So these butcher trays are probably your best bet. Probably great. Okay.
It says it's looking good.
What's that?
It says it's looking good.
Okay, good. So I'm going to start here, Jeff, so if you want to kind of zoom in on me.
Yeah.
So you guys, I'm getting ready to go. I'm going to go on this Frazetta right here. And I want to get a little bit more, just a little bit more light on the actual reference. There we go. So you can kind of just, zoom in so that it's as close as possible in there. And I'm not in the way, I don't think, so it should be good. Does that look pretty good?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so again, it'd be nice to have a, camera on the palette and camera on this. But these are just kind of, again, little teasers for you guys. And I'll I did a 15 hours or 18 hours of this online as a phase. And so if you like what you see, you could always join down the road. And this will be 18 hours of watching me do these things with 3 cameras. One on the palette, one on right over my head at a perpendicular to the surface, and one over my shoulder like we're using today. And they're all high def, and there's 3 cameras, so you get kind of the best view that you're going to get watching someone demo. And the thing with gouache, when you're working in a class, nobody can ever see you demo because you're always watching the back of the guy demoing because you're too close to the image, unless you have projectors and you want to project it up on a large screen, which is doable, but just, again, lots of expensive equipment, hassle, all this kind of stuff. So anyway, I've got it drawn. I do not spray fix the drawing because it will beat up the gouache and it won't take well to the board. You want to have a durable enough board to actually take washes, water washes. And what I'm going to do is when I look at his face, he's got some blue, some greens in the muzzle. He uses lots of stains. He's a very thin painter. I've done lots of research on Frazetta. I've done lots of copies. I've done just a ton of time with him. So I'm pretty comfortable with his method of painting. Now what you could do is you could wet this board down first, or you can just do localized stains like I'm doing here, which is just basically go in and stain across the image with either, kind of a diluted version of the color that you may see there. And at this point, I'm not too worried about being exact. I'm not worried about everything being perfect. I just want to kill the white of the board and get something going so that I can start getting into opaques as quick as possible. The gray board I was working on I preferred simply because it has that pre-established middle range, which is kind of nice. So I don't know if there's any questions coming in or anything.
Not just yet.
Not yet? Okay. So again, yeah, just enjoy, sit back and relax, and hopefully this is entertaining and as well as informative for you. I'm very happy to be able to do it, do it for you guys. And each week we'll be doing something a little different. Sometimes we'll do life drawing, sometimes we'll do life painting, sometimes we'll do gesture stuff, sometimes we'll do still life maybe. We're just going to try to mix it up a little bit and show you some of the different teachers at the atelier and how they work and how they communicate. And Eric did a wonderful job last week. That was really cool. It was kind of fun watching him, draw the undead, Yoni in his get up, which was phenomenal. So it was really, it's been cool. So here I'm going in, and you can do it like a watercolor, and you can kind of start in and you can work your stains for a long time if you want to. I like to just kind of get in there and start getting it established. A lot of times I look at the stains that are coming through in his painting, and then I try to paint that stain underneath so that when I'm, putting my upper layers on, I can let some of that breathe through as an underpainting. And that's always a good call in almost any kind of painting, to have that stain and that underpainting come through. So again, right now I'm not looking at the pure black of his hair. I'm looking at putting in a slightly diluted reddish brown to come through and where the highlights are in the hair. And a lot of times if I was doing this originally and wasn't copying him, I wouldn't really know exactly where I wanted those stains to be left. So I just would want to have them in there just in case. And then I would try to see if I could preserve some of them as I move further into the piece. It just allows the shadows to breathe a little bit. Now I've added a little bit of phthalo green in with my alizarin mixture. Alizarin, crimson, and phthalo green make one of the most beautiful blacks. Really beautifully strong black. There's many different combinations that'll give you that Prussian blue and burnt sienna and just any number of combinations that give you a chromatic black, which means a black that has color in it and is not devoid of color. A dead black, like straight ivory or something. Although there have been great painters that use black in its pure form, Zorn, Sargent, Soroya occasionally, Feshin. They're all, some of the greats. So it's not like you can't do it and shouldn't do it. It's just a matter of personal preference. I like to have color in my blacks. Occasionally I will use a dead black, but most of the time I inject some kind of color into it so that if lighter colors do hit it, I'll be safe by having a gray that has a temperature and a color to it, rather than just a dead value. So it's really up to the individual. There's so many ways to paint, so many good ways to paint. So I'm going in, and this is still fairly diluted. Now the key to working in gouache is many keys, but one of them is that you have to have the right water to paint ratio. And if that ratio is not correct, the paint really won't reactivate when you go to blend it later. So it's a very temperamental medium, like most. It gives you hard edges immediately, and it makes you fight for the soft edges. And when I was originally taught it by Fred Fixler and Morgan Westling and guys like that, and Glenn Orbick, I was taught a tiling method of using it where you use shape recognition, painting, in order to navigate form, which makes you more disciplined when you get into oil painting, which is quite viscous and moves around like it's just very difficult to handle. To get hard edges in it, you have to really work for it. So it's almost the opposite of gouache in that regard. And so I would say, I was very thankful to get Fred and these guys to teach me such a strong method of working in gouache as a training medium. Because I don't really have any delusions that you guys are going to run out and make a full-blown career in gouache painting. But I do think that if you want to be a better oil painter and you want to understand how to turn form with temperature and shape, more, you would want to go to this medium to learn that. And so I'm teaching it now at our atelier and have done so over the last 20 years as a way of teaching people to have a better sense of working in oil when they get to oil. And same with inking, brush inking, quill inking. That's a dead language in the professional arena, more or less. But it's still such a shame to watch something that beautiful go to be put to rest just because it's not commercially viable. So I think, it really depends on the individual. I have a tendency to like to dig up these old mediums and give them a fair go, because I think, if nothing else, nobody else is learning them, and that's going to give me an edge in some way over other people if I'm competitive in the professional arena, because I'll think differently. I'll process information differently. All mediums help to encourage that, and each one you really can't tell what little magical tidbit you're going to get out of it that's going to give you the look of your work or something. So let me see. I did not set my little timer, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm probably about 5 minutes in or something.
A couple of questions.
Cool.
Already. Jay Ham wants to know, what movie posters did you work on?
When I was originally doing concept work, I was like a visual development concept artist for movie posters. So what I would do is a lot of the preliminary comp work. And so I work on things like Army of Darkness. I worked on all the way through till the very end when I did the movie poster comp, actual painting comp. That's the only one I did a full-fledged, almost finished painting of, was because I was very young at the time. I think I was 20 years old, maybe, when I started working in that industry, 19. So I was a young kid, and so doing movie poster finishes was very difficult to get a finish because most of them were done by Drew Struzan or they're done by Morgan Wesling or guys of that caliber. And I was the guy that was doing a lot of the preliminary sketch work and doing, again, the black, white, and acrylic kind of comps that were done more monochromatically where they would burn through like about 20 of those trying to find out what movie poster they wanted to explore to go to a finish. At the time, Photoshop was just starting to be used. Everyone was still doing things by hand. It was really a cool period for illustrators. Sorry about that. You might not have heard that because I turned my head, but it was a really nice period for illustrators. Morgan was a good, I'd gotten to know Morgan Wesling a little bit, and he was doing movie posters at the time. Greg Pro, who was a good friend of mine. Tony Pro, his brother, is now a really great painter as well, and I also know him well. He's a great guy. So I was kind of, in the middle of that industry. I did a lot of storyboarding. I did a lot of concepting. Again, these movie posters were really fun to work on because they were heavily utilizing likeness. And I had come from the background of that atelier training where, that kind of skill set was really kind of beat into you. I mean, it was really quite prevalent in our school. So it was really kind of tailor-made to going into that industry. And it was a great industry to cut your teeth in because it was really amazingly difficult deadlines. I mean, the deadlines were just brutal. I've never really seen deadlines quite that bad. Where, they'd give you the poster on Friday and want it by Monday. And we're talking a full-fledged finished painted poster, and you got so you're basically going to be up 3 nights without sleep. And it was brutal. It was hard. It was okay when I was in my early 20s because I could handle that kind of abuse. But as you get a little older, that's not really quite the kind of hours you want to be pulling. So it gets a little bit more difficult to do that. But yeah, I worked on a lot of just concepts, Terminator stuff, Dracula, things as goofy as Boomerang with Beethoven. I mean, you name it. I just did Encino Man. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. It was just, some were B movies, some were A movies, some were things like that. But it was really a great industry to get started in, and I was very thankful to have my start in the movie industry.
Ben Barker.
Ben, what's up, Ben?
Ben Barker would like to know if it's hot press or a cold press board that you're working on.
I work on both hot pressed and cold pressed, and I always get confused between the two. And it's so funny. Like, there's these little weird things that'll just always confuse me, no matter how many times. And it sounds really lame, but it's probably part of my. I was slightly dyslexic as a kid, so I have this. I always get confused between the two, but I like both of them for different reasons. The cold pressed and the hot pressed. I mean, you're going to have a textural difference. I think this is hot press. I'm pretty sure, but I have to look on the back of it at break time. But it's basically our standard board that we use. 114 is my favorite, but it's hard to get and it's expensive. So, and I've had a lot of problems with Crescent board as of recently, and it's very disappointing to me. I mean, they're one of the biggest illustration board producers, but yet this board keeps peeling off. The edges keep peeling off of it, and I'm just really frustrated with it. So I've been looking for an alternative board. If anybody knows one out there that wants to fire me, an email or something, that would be cool. I'm going to start experimenting more with different surface. Gouache will take to almost anything. You can do it on illustration board, you can do it on canvas, you could do it on Bristol, any number of things. As long as it's durable enough to take a general wash, it's good for gouache, and it doesn't wrinkle up and potato chip on you. You don't want that happening. So right now what I'm doing, and again, I don't mean to cut short or anything, but I'm kind of going in and out of, painting, talking, thinking, this, that. So it's very challenging, obviously, but it's fun. It's great fun. It's almost like, again, acting, live acting. But right now I'm just trying to nail the darker areas of this painting and get those blocked in. And then I'll start to work in between. I'll do a little airbrush at the very end. I love airbrush for glazing. I don't like it. I don't cut frisk it. I don't like the old school, like hardcore airbrushing. I don't like the look of the tight, hard edges that are around everything. But I do like to use it for a glazing tool, just like glazing in oil paint. It's very similar. And you'll see how I do that towards the end of these paintings. I'll go through and do a little of that. So right now, again, he's got this really serious look. I mean, all of his guys are usually him, Frazetta. So this is like a self-portrait he did. But they all look, man, they look like they're about tough as nails, you know. I mean, but again, it's the characters that he paints. It's those crazy, you know, kind of wonderful barbarian types that he kind of just coined such a great look for. And I grew up, you know, drawing Frazetta, painting Frazetta, studying Frazetta. My dad loves him. My dad was always a big fan, and would collect his work way before anyone even know who he was. My dad would buy the covers from the Edgar Rice Burroughs covers, and he would rip them off, take them off, and get rid of the book, recycle the book, because the books were kind of, you know, they weren't great, and he had no interest, you know, but the covers were phenomenal. So I would sit at his studio as a young kid and just draw Frazetta covers, you know, and that was when I was like 7 or something, 6, 7 years old. So it was kind of a neat way to grow up with a dad that was cool enough to let you do that, and not, you know, you can imagine most parents would just, you know, they would cringe at the idea of you drawing such violent things and doing that stuff. You know, they would think that you had a, you know, screw loose or something. But it was great. My dad was always encouraging, and I grew up looking at guys like Frazetta. So when I came a little later, when I wanted to do comics, I did heavy metal covers for a while and stuff like that, and that's where I got my start. Most people think of me as a fine art painter, and primarily that's what I do now. But there's still a huge part of me that loves comics, fantasy work, visual development, gaming, you know, all that stuff, all the stuff that is so cool. And some of the best artists work in those industries. So I'm always quick to tell people not to fire sale or to look down on illustrators and conceptors and stuff, because they're usually better than the fine artists, in my opinion. There's a good many of them that are way stronger technical painters and designers and stuff, I think. And because I come kind of from that background, and my dad went to Art Center in Pratt back in the 60s, and is such a wonderful illustrator and artist himself, that you know, I have the utmost respect for that industry, and I got my starts in that industry. So, and so did Morgan, and so did, you know, Jeremy, and all these different people that you know or hear about. A lot of them are ex-illustrators. Most best fine artists are. They go through a phase of doing illustration and then ultimately come out the other side and end up in fine art at some point. Not always. Sometimes go all the way through, but yeah, your styles come and go, and sometimes your style, if it's a style like Bernie Fuchs or someone like that, you might end up exhausting the style as it comes in and out of vogue. Drew Struzan kind of had that happen, even though he's one of my favorite illustrators. But you know, that work doesn't get done as much. Occasionally, you know, they'll still go to him when somebody like Lucas or Spielberg wants to do a certain poster in that old kind of nostalgic style. But man, what a great style he came up with, and he tapped it out for about 20 years before he you know, it kind of went passé a little bit. But yeah, I did a little bit of that technique and copied some of that when I was young, because I didn't have my own identity, so I would do kind of a faux Drew Struzan style like so many other artists while you're trying to get your first jobs and get used to working. It's hard to have a personal identity that's totally yours. It takes quite a long time to get that. Some people never do, because they just don't. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm doing little tiles. You can see the little juxtapositions of temperature and change in shape. And I'm using, just mixing pretty quickly over here. And I know you can't see my mixing surface as much, but you know, a lot of people want to see, and again, I can only, you know, you can only do so much when you're doing these little live streams, but the main thing you want to look at is the values I use, because I'm not really following his colors verbatim right now. I'm trying to kind of just get it somewhat knocked in and locked down, and then I'll tweak it to the temperatures and the colors. And I'm not trying to do a forgery of a Frazetta. I just want to learn a little bit about and appreciate his design sense, his choices of edges, his lost and found shapes and edges. And I'm going to do that a lot better by doing a study of him than if I just looked at the book and maybe looked at this image for 30 seconds or 10 seconds or something. I'm going to be spending an hour on it. So that means I'm acutely looking at his painting for 1 hour. And I don't think I would do that if I didn't do a study. Right? It'd be highly unlikely that you're just going to sit and stare at a book for 1 page for an hour straight. People would look at you kind of funny. So nose is a little lighter. Some of the glabella area, the forehead, has a little bit of that same kind of orangey tone to it. And, kind of the forehead will have a tendency to go a little more yellow ochre. The cheeks and the nose and the ears will be a little bit more ruddy, meaning a little bit more red prevalent, because the capillaries and blood flow is a lot more intense to those areas. The forehead's a lot thinner with the frontalis muscle and different muscles that don't really have the blood flow quite as extreme in those areas. So you're going to get more of an ochre, yellow ochre kind of effect in those areas. Again, I could probably paint this whole head with just a number. I think I'm on a number 1 round. It's quite small, but giving me what I want. So I don't normally switch brushes unless the brush isn't accommodating or isn't agreeing with me for some reason, and that'll happen from time to time.
Think of another.
Okay.
Abigail Platter would like to know, how soon are you adding white, and is there any white in that lightish red?
Yeah, I add the white pretty early into the painting. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that's there's some people that really are phobic of white, like as if it's somewhat evil or something. And I've never been that scared of it or that intimidated by it. It does chalk up colors and it is cold, but you need it to tint, and a lot of times you can use lighter colors to do your tinting or to drop value or make a value lighter. You could use a light yellow, you could use a light red, and then use white sparingly. Or if you put white in a color, sometimes just be conscientious of that and add a little bit of color back into it afterwards. A little bit of white, or once you put white in, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red back into it, and you'll find that it works really nicely. Now the white of the eyes on this, because he's got these really kind of intense eyes. I think I want to knock them down a little bit. They're kind of annoying right now because they're so white. So I'll take a little bit of water and borrow some of that dark that's around it and just move it over the eyes so that they sit in the sockets a little bit nicer for a minute, because otherwise it looks again like he's possessed or something, which he kind of has that look, that really intense look. But I want to, again, inch my way up to doing the actual look. A little bit more red, kind of out here around the outside of the brow ridge, also around the zygomatic bone. Go ahead.
Abigail Platter would also like to know, when you use the term design on a thumbnail like this, what exactly do you mean?
Well, design, shape is always representing form, and it could be anatomy. It's usually going to be something anatomical on a head or something. So all the little shapes that you're painting with have to be representative of some piece of information. That could be a cartilage, it could be a tendons, it could be the muscle body, it could be any number of things. So you don't just go moving shape around and hope that something really nice happens to land on your painting. That's not a good way to paint. Instead, you want to look at what it is you're trying to indicate. Ask yourself what it is intellectually. Do you understand it from an academic standpoint? Is it the muzzle? Is it the alar cartilage on the front of his nose? What is it? And once you've determined what it should be or what it could be, based on your knowledge of studying anatomy and things like that over a long period of time, you can better design that shape to your liking and get it to represent not only what it is that you were trying to represent, but also in a nice design manner. Some of these artists that I'm emulating right here are some of the better designers that you're going to run into. J.C. Leyendecker is easily right up there with again, Alphonse Mucha, and Drew Struzan is kind of also in that wheelhouse. But these are people that are virtuoso designers. Every shape that they pick has a beautiful combination of straights and curves in such a way that it not only explains what it is they're trying to get across, but does so in a very aesthetically pleasing manner. Now, not everybody's going to agree with Frazetta's aesthetic, or Leyendecker, or Rockwell, and that's okay. We don't all want to paint the same, but it's hard to argue with someone like Leyendecker. It's hard to say, oh, I don't like his stuff because I don't like his shapes. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's fine. You're entitled to that opinion, but it's highly unlikely. I mean, it's just odd because he's so good. I mean, it's hard to argue with his design sense. But again, I'm not here to kind of say everyone must like these certain artists. It's just these are some of my favorites, and they're the ones that I go to try to develop my understanding of what a good shape is. Because really, when you sit down and someone says, "What is a good shape?" I don't know. You tell me. I mean, I don't know. It's not in the dictionary under good shape. It's not in Wikipedia under good shape. You're not going to find a definition, mathematical definition for what creates an attractive looking lip or nose or cheek or chin or elbow or things of that sort. It's going to come from other people's, it's a ratio of straights to curves that we have to respect. And it would be nice if that ratio was a mathematical equation that could be easily utilized, but it's a lot more cryptic than that. And it's a lot more subtle than that. So a lot of us have to develop a sense for that over time by, again, usually borrowing somebody else's design sense that's better than us while we're cultivating our own. And again, most of you will have innate inside you some idea of what you like, whether you're aware of it yet or haven't yet unraveled that. It's there, it's ready to be revealed, but you're going to have to do so probably by, again, springboarding off of some other talented person that comes before you. And I go to people like these guys to try to trigger my own personal design sense that hopefully someday will be synonymous with these artists. So my goal is to become Jeff Watts and to become as easily recognizable as Frazetta, as Feshin, as Soroya, as Sargent. But that's an awfully bold thing to try to go after, but we all have to go after that. I mean, if we don't think we have it in us to be another Sargent, another Soroya, another Feshin, then what are we doing? I think, why not? I mean, these people weren't superhuman. They were just incredibly disciplined. Yes, they were gifted in certain ways and maybe somewhat genetically, but a lot of it can be learned through hard work and emulation. And that's a big part of what our school is built on is this idea that you want to surround yourself by the best people possible and then work and emulate off of them until you can think for yourself, at which time you can venture into your own expression in whatever area it is that interests you, whether it's comics or fine art or concepting. It doesn't really matter. The key is to get your eye and your hand to be incredibly good. Once they're good, then it's I don't have a lot left to teach you, other than to support you as a friend and as an equal. And at that point, we're both going to be trying to just do the best work we can, try to have some fun doing it, try to get paid decently for it, because we've sacrificed greatly to get to that level. So why shouldn't we be paid well? But we have to all get in that pecking order and start learning to accept the fact that that's kind of how it works, and some will move through things faster and some slower, and some of you guys will bog down on color and some will move right through it very naturally because you have a natural bend towards it. Some people are good emulators, some people are good at tech and not very good at people. There's all kinds of combinations of artists out there, and I think you should be as well-rounded as you possibly can be, and that you should try to get good at all the big major areas: still life, portrait, landscape, figure, because if nothing else, just to prevent yourself from burning out. If you can only do one thing, you're probably going to get bored of it after a while and might suffer from drowning in your own success in one specific area, and then find that you can't branch out from that very easily, and as a result burn yourself out a little bit. So long term, you want to be very smart and talk to other experienced artists that have gone through a lot of this stuff, and if they're nice enough to tell you the truth, then they're going to tell you a lot of the same stuff that I'm probably have been kind of spitting out on these little tutorials and stuff. But the main thing is also, at the end of the day, you want to have fun, you want to enjoy what it is you're doing, and it's going to be hard work. There's no way around it. It's going to hurt sometimes. It's going to be a little bit emotionally draining and all that kind of good stuff. But what will really carry you through probably most is just your real sincere passion for the craft. And when you're a good teacher, you want to instill that in your students. You want to instill a sincere love of drawing and painting. The rest, that is what's going to carry them through the hard times, the thin times, all the things that they're going to most likely go through if they're you know, when life is just life, you know, just life things. And so you want to prepare yourself with very, very incredibly strong skills. And that's what you're going to rest on during the hard times, you know, is your skill sets. And so I'm always looking to add new ones. I'm always looking to polish up old ones. I'm never sitting on my laurels and just saying, oh yeah, I'm good now and I can just sit back and enjoy a margarita and relax. No, it's time to get, whenever you think like that, it's time to check yourself and get back in the game and start learning something new or start pushing yourself past your limits. Do an 8-foot painting with 42 characters in it and see how that goes. You know, once you think you're really good at just doing little heads or something, you know, try a big narrative. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. Get outside and start doing plein air. Let nature show you what color really is and how it works. Learn to respect it from nature and then learn to bend it from your imagination. Most great painters in color are inventors. They're not literal, and they didn't learn color through literal means. I learned color by doing, a lot of times by doing little thumbnails like this where I was borrowing the color of somebody else. And when I do this little study, I remember the harmonies better by having done this study. And when I go to create a character in a similar situation, you may very well see some of these kind of color harmonies and stuff start to trickle in. And most likely they're from studies that I did long ago, but they helped me put my intuitive color sense in place. I'm not a big fan of color theory. I don't like training in color theory. I don't think it works very well. Colors are relative, and they're always relative to what you're comparing them to. So it's very difficult to learn some generic formula that's going to help you navigate the myriad of options and scenarios that you might and are going to run into in the reality of it as a painter. So I think it's better to get in and start learning it from a practical sense rather than a little bit, you know, more rigidly and abstractly. Although, you know, again, I'm going to have a lot of people that would argue with me on that, but quite frankly, most of the ones that argue it the most really aren't the best colorists. The ones that try to learn it that way don't normally have a very good natural color sense. And so they try to learn color through academic means by turning it into calculus or, you know, algebra or something. And it's really not, you know, it's more of a feeling. It's more getting the value correct, the edge correct, the shape correct, the design, the drawing. If all that stuff's working, the color is so pliable and so flexible and so able to be manipulated that it's almost hard not to when you're at that level. So you really, I think it's best to put your focus mostly on good value rendition and edge manipulation and drawing and stuff like that, so that you can really get bang out good at that stuff. And then the color will, by hanging out with good colorists, if you're lucky enough, or being in an environment, or you know, again, watching videos or something of good people, you'll start to pick up their harmonies, and after a while, you'll start to mimic them, and then you'll find some of your own combinations, and over time, you'll find your own color sensitivity. But it may take, you know, quite some time. You know, cultivating a great understanding of color is a lifetime pursuit. It's not a 10-week course. It's not a couple, you know, some book that you read. It's thousands of drawings, or paintings, in gouache, and oil, and watercolor, and digital, and all these different mediums. And it's learning to really learning color by practical application. And there's no way around that. You could read 50 books on color or do 50 paintings, and I would pick the 50 paintings 10 times over, you know, from reading 50 books on it. So I don't read a lot about color. I experience it. I explore it. I experiment with it. I have fun with it. It's my favorite area of manipulation. And so that little bit I got right there, you could sand that off with sandpaper later. It's just a little bit of paint got on my wrist there when I was. Watch that, and that's why you always see me kind of holding a paper towel and wiping my hands, because I know a lot of times I get this water and stuff on it, and then it trickles into my paint.
We have another question here, Jeff.
Sure.
Mikey Z Videos wants to know, it appears that even though you are using white, the paint is still thin at this point. Is that correct?
It is in areas, but it's also, I'm trying to get a general opaqueness with it that can be reactivated. When it's in its thin state, it doesn't want to reactivate. Gouache doesn't really, it kind of just looks at you and kind of asks, what do you want to do with me, when it's too thin. It doesn't really respond very well. So I started thin, and then I worked through some stains, and now I'm going up into opaque tiles. And those opaque tiles are a certain consistency, and it's very difficult to explain verbally or in book form what the exact perfect consistency of the gouache is, water to paint ratio, to allow it to blend. That's something you'll just have to witness firsthand as you experiment with it. But a lot of people never get the proper education in gouache, and as such blame it and don't like it because they try to use it too transparently. Or you can use it like a watercolor. You can make it look almost identical to watercolor. I've seen gouaches that are very difficult to discern. I have to look very acutely at it to see whether it's a watercolor or a gouache. And I was also surprised to see pleasantly that when I went to see the Zorn show, he used a heck of a lot of white gouache in his watercolors, especially in the water. On some of the scenes, Moorish type scenes where they're just beautiful, some of the best watercolors I've ever seen. But he was not against using gouache, opaque gouache to get his effects. And I'm really happy to see that, because you always will find some diehard watercolorists that just rails people for using gouache. And it seems so trite and cheesy and goofy to take such a powerful stance, dogmatic stance on such a goofy thing, in my opinion. Painting's hard no matter how you slice it. It's just brutally hard. So whatever you use to get a great effect, I'm all good with, personally. But you know, you will get those people that poo-poo and, oh, you know, I can't believe he used white. He must not be as good as I thought. And it's like, well, you try doing that. Even if you gave someone white, try to do a painting like Zorn of that quality level in watercolor. It's amazing. So yeah, I'm not a purist, that's for sure. I'll use whatever it takes. Everything in art is technique. Everything's could be construed or thought of as a cheesy technique. Bob Ross, as much flack as he takes, really wasn't that much different than Fetchin, other than they both use palette knife a lot. Yeah, the one guy designed shapes better and chose to use the paint in a little different manner. But when you get right down to the crux of it, it's still technique-y. So you know, who's to say which one? You know, I mean, I obviously know which one I think is better, but when it gets right down to it, though, it's still technique. So I try not to get too dogmatic about that stuff. But yeah, my consistency right now that I'm shooting for, I don't want the paint caked on like an oil. It won't want to do that. It's not oil paint, so don't try to make it get impasto and all thick and juicy looking like a nice, you know, the one thing that I love about oil is that nice juicy look that you can get with the paint, and it wants to work, and that's its sweet spot. With gouache, the consistency should kind of be matte and flat, and you shouldn't be able to see, you know, as much of the ridges of the paint. So if you run your hand over a gouache painting, it should not feel like braille. It should feel nice and smooth and kind of almost gritty. Not, you know, so that's kind of the nice sweet spot for it. I've seen people dump, I mean, I've used palette knife with it. I've done crazy stuff when I'm just fooling around for myself, not when I'm teaching it. I refrain from that because I don't want to get into cheesy stuff like that when you're teaching people substance. So I try to go for teaching people the procedure that I learned, and then they can do with it what they want after that. They can start exploring it in their own way. So I'm kind of working my way up, just looking at in the hair. There's some gray, blue-gray, a little bit over here on the right side. I'm going to kind of dry brush it in, so I'm not tiling. The hair has kind of got its own an art to it to do hair. It's not going to be tiled necessarily, but it does have a layering process that's fairly interesting. And again, best to show, not to talk about. But you know, you kind of start sometimes with, again, the stains being maybe the highlights in the hair, and then you basically work your way over the top of them, allowing those stains to come through and look like where the light is hitting the hair at a right angle. And then you have to pull both ways in and out from both directions to get the hair to soften and look more organic. And it's a process. And again, just as you watch me kind of pull up this little Frazetta head, I've added some, in the bangs, I've added a little bit of, I added that little blue-gray there that's not in the actual reference to make it look a little bit more like bangs. He just went with a very graphic kind of solution, which it looks great. I mean, and again, I don't always agree with Frazetta 100%. There's stuff I don't like about some of his design and things that I would do differently. And I don't have a lot of qualms about saying that. It's not an insult to Frazetta. It's just I still want to retain my opinion of design. I'm not just going to take his as verbatim that it's great. He occasionally chattered areas of paintings and stuff and messed them up, and they weren't always perfect. But man, his design sense as an overall whole, his body of work is quite impressive and quite unique. His ability to stage, and usually his just the positioning of things, people, the curves in the mouths, all kinds of little things that he just did. So he always picked a really nice version of everything, it seemed like. Again, he had a very strong sense of what he liked. He wasn't afraid to paint it that way, and he didn't care what people thought. You could just tell. So he's like, this is the way I paint. I'm going to paint it that way. If you like it, great. If you don't, oh well. And that's shows in all of his work, the strength of his character as a person and his opinion of his art. Very strong opinion. One of the strongest, I think. And because of that, he owned it so authentically that you almost just go along for the ride without even asking questions, because it's so, he does it with so much confidence. You can just tell, his decision making and stuff. So that's one thing I've always admired about him, is he's Frazetta, and he doesn't make any apologies for it. It's just, that's who I am, that's what I do, like it or don't like it, that's the way it's going to be. And again, he made a genre of barbarians and things like that, highly collectible, and amazingly took it to a fine art level as high as many other artists throughout history. So it goes to show that if your passion's in an area and you're good enough at it and you love it enough and you own it, you can make it. You can make something out of it. There's not many living artists that command the price or the value of a Frazetta while he was alive. I mean, he was up in the millions while he was alive. That is really rare, especially for a representational artist. Just it is. So he was able to do what many people couldn't. I mean, many artists some people would say, are more whatever, fine art, high level, whatever, but they weren't able to pull that off in their genre. And it's a lot easier than the genre he was in. So now I'm going in and doing some water glazing. And what that is I'm taking water and moving it over the paint to mush together my tiles and make them smoother and give them more the illusion. Although I love that tiled look, Frazetta is not really a tile painter as much as like Cornwell or some of the other painters that I showed you a little earlier that I was emulating. I'm just kind of going in and mimicking more his style, which is a softer, non-tiled style that I see. So I've got the head kind of in. Looks pretty good. I'm not sure how much time I used. About a half an hour, 40 minutes maybe. So I've got about 20 more minutes on it, and I should be able to do a nice little head in that time. But I'm talking and painting and gabbing, and so you want to start doing these. But I say in my video, like all the ones that I showed you earlier were 60 minute, 40 to 60 minute paintings. And I tell the people doing the online program that they should spend maybe 2 hours, 3 hours on each one of them. If I'm rolling through them that fast and you're just starting to learn how to do them, you're not going to be able to follow that pace, nor should you. It would be ridiculous. It's just, you want to take your time and enjoy and learn from them. Don't make them white knuckle exercises. They should be fun. You can always have little heads like this going in your sketchbook. You can do it. Get a Bristol sketchbook and just one that's got tone paper, maybe that gray paper, or even a taupey paper or something, and just go in and just always be doing gouache studies, little compositional studies, little head studies, little hand studies, little drapery studies, and it's a great way to learn, and it's very enjoyable. At least I find it. If you don't find it enjoyable, then you might ask yourself whether you want to be a painter, because sometimes, a lot of this stuff I don't really understand when people say, well, I don't really like doing this. Like, you don't like studying Frazetta, or you don't like studying, your favorite painters in paint? That seems really odd to me. Now that cut line that he's got, this is like, it looks like almost like a lightning bolt scar coming off of his nose. And I have it just the white of the board right now. It's really kind of an red orange that I'm going to kind of go in and now replace.
Another question here, Jeff.
Sure.
Sebastian Wolf would like to know, first of all, he's saying thanks for demoing.
Sure. Yep.
I can't believe that a method like the Riley abstractions aren't standard at art colleges considering how awesome they are. Are they coming back into schools in the US apart from the ateliers these days, or are they still unknown like in Europe?
Well, I mean, the Riley method, as I understand it, and our school probably has one of the stronger understanding and still teaches it to the most honest level that I've seen. LA Fig Arts does a pretty good job too. They have a lot of guys that originally were from that period of Fred. Not a lot of the guys went on to teach from that Riley period. Fred was one of the few, and I was lucky enough again to go to that school. But the method is highly, it's not even controversial at all. It's one of the best methods I've ever seen of navigating form. But it is way more cryptic than people give it credit for, and people dumb it down a lot of the time. So abstraction is more of a way of thinking than it is a formula or a system that's generic by any means. It's a complex style of solving any visual problem, whether you're abstracting a tree or rocks or a wave or people or heads. It's about learning how to think abstractly using this wire grid is basically based heavily on anatomy. So the stronger your anatomy becomes, the better ability you have to manipulate what you see and create versions of what you see that are more dynamic than what you're seeing, hence Frazetta. And so the Riley method, we're getting ready to work with Art Renewal Center on with our online program with a thing called the Da Vinci Initiative, where they're attempting to get the Riley method using the way we do it in our videos into the teachers for high schools to get it across the United States in the high schools to start teaching this method. So I'm very honored to be, one of the, we were kind of chosen because of the breadth and the depth of our program online to actually head that up. So we're starting to work with them on that. And so you're hopefully going to see this technique starting to venture a little bit more into the mainstream because of things like our online program. And some, there aren't a lot of guys that stayed around to teach this stuff. I'm one of the few. Glenn Orbick still does it. That really love teaching it and have started teaching it at a young age and can actually took it, through it at a young age and were able to put their energy into doing it. A lot of the guys that should do it or could do it are too old now to probably spend the time teaching it the way we do. It's too much energy. It's just not going to happen probably. The guys like Richard Schmidt who could really, could have, done amazing. He did an amazing job just by putting down it in book form in Alla Prima and stuff like that. Probably the best painting book I've ever seen. But you're not going to find him teaching, one of these classes like this on a weekly basis. Or Morgan or any of the guys that really could or should. They're just not going to do it. They don't have the time. They have families. They have careers in full swing. And they're just not going to be able to do it. So that's one of the reasons why it's still so difficult to find people teaching it and people that are good at it. Is because it's so damn hard to teach, and there's very few people that would take the time. Now I just blew out that eye, which is unfortunate, but I'll get it back here in a second. I can do a little pick out in there, but I want it very subtle in that eye. So hopefully I answer your question. The question is it is coming back, but it's hard to get it to come back because it takes a collaborative effort by a lot of people to do it. And up until this point, there haven't been many people that wanted to step up to the plate and do it because it's just hard. Ateliers are run by artists. Artists don't normally run businesses well, so a lot of them fail. And it's difficult to keep one of them going long enough to get enough traction to build a movement. And so as a result, it just doesn't, it's not seen that much. From what I can, we've been at it for 22 years now. And probably the longest of most, only a couple other ones that have been around that long. It's pretty funny to think, but if you would have told me back when I was in school that I would probably be carrying the torch for the Riley method, I probably would have laughed at you because that did not seem like what I was going to be doing. But it somewhat seems to be something that kind of found me, so I'm and I enjoy doing it. I'm honored to be able to do that. So I'm having a lot of fun trying to bring gouache back, try to help facilitate these mediums that a lot of people have just literally forgot about. They've kind of pushed them aside. Now let me, I'm going to work a little bit quieter here for a second while I try to put some finishing touches on this. So I'm going to do a little airbrush, not a lot. There's not a ton of airbrush that needs to be done because I'm actually kind of on the dark side of the values. I need to actually lighten them up again. So let me refrain from that for a second. I'll probably do some at the very end. But like the fill trim needs to be lighter in there, so I just picked a little peach. It might have been a little more yellow ochre in the reference, but it's not going to kill anything. Around the muzzle here has a lighter passage, so I need to go in and I'm going back over. You want to be careful going over other values with gouache because it will basically ultimately cover the mistake if it is a mistake or just whatever change you make. But later when you go to blend, it's going to pull that back to the surface and you can find yourself in a lot of trouble if you're constantly doing that. So you want to be pretty strategic with how you do that layover. Now here's, again, a little bit lighter there, maybe a little bit on the glabella. Could use a little indication.
We had another question actually
Sure.
about values. Mikey Z Videos wants to know, do you keep your values close in the middle and build out to extreme lights and darks as you build up the paint?
Okay, what was that again? I was busy blending.
Do you keep your values close in the middle and build out to the extreme lights and darks as you build up the paint?
You know, oftentimes I do. Sometimes I establish the lightest light and darkest dark immediately, but it really depends on my mood. I know that's not what a lot of people want to hear, but sometimes I just don't feel that confident, and I go with a more conservative method. If I'm working on a white canvas that's not stained, sometimes I'm annoyed with that white, and I'll try to kill it as quick as possible, and then build my midtones up. If I'm working on a stained canvas that's already middle value, then I'm just going to work my midtones are already there, so I usually establish my lightest light and darkest dark, and then just work my midtones around it. So it really depends on the surface I'm working on. It depends on my mood, how confident I feel about the situation, and those things. So those are all things that affect my choice on whether to establish the lightest light, darkest dark immediately, or whether I feel confident enough just to go wing it. Newer students have a tendency to need to have their values range established because it's just overwhelming to try to see through the white of the canvas, as well as just, it's easier for them to control their values. So I would encourage newer students to work with more stained canvases and establish their full value range when they start. More advanced artists could refrain from that, or could even take their time, with that if they wanted to. So I'm just going to take some water and run it through these bear claws and whatever the hell he's got on his neck. And just kind of let it drip a little bit out like a watercolor, just because I don't want it. It's just so stark. I want to blow some of those edges of the jewelry out a little bit. So again, just vignetting is just an art, and you just want to have some fun with it. Now this one's just full of water right now, and I'm just gonna water glaze over some of my stuff to help knock back. And it's kind of like a poor man's airbrush, is what I call it. And I can just kind of go in and anything going on over there? Jeff?
No, looking good for now.
Okay, so again, yeah, you guys have some really good questions. And again, for me, gouache, my dad's an incredibly good gouache painter and did mostly architectural renderings using it for about, I don't know, better part of his architectural career. And loved the medium. And so I was exposed to the medium as a kid, way before I knew what it was or how to use it, and that was really fun to have. And then later having Fred, who was so good at it, Fred Fixler, who started the California Art Institute, was so good at gouache, and it really was his medium of choice. I never really even saw him any of his oil paintings, really, because he never really seemed to do many of them. He mostly just worked in the gouache. So it's always been a part of my, seems like part of, it keeps coming back to me over and over. I end up running into it in different parts, at different parts of my life and different times in my life. So, you know, maybe there's something there, but the main thing is I like it. It's my second favorite medium to oil. Digital I will try, and I will work on getting good at that, just because it's such a cool medium, and it operates and looks very much like gouache. It's just like a vibrant gouache, you know, like a really high saturated gouache, but a lot of the edge work, the way it's manipulated, has many similarities to gouache. And so some of the best, like, you know, Nathan Falks and guys like that are just killer artists and conceptors, they are such great traditional gouache painters as well. That they're really just, it's neat to see those guys, you know, occasionally still working in it. Even though I understand why they've gone over to digital for their professional work, because it just, there's no way that you can compete with how fast you can make changes, you know, in the digital medium versus traditional. So although I could probably paint as fast as a digital painter in gouache, I couldn't make the corrections as fast if they needed to be done. And since art directors love to do that, you know, you're kind of stuck using whatever medium is the fastest. So definitely that's where gouache kind of lost out to digital, was in the speed, correction speed factor. But it doesn't mean any, I mean, you know, you can still do your gouache painting and then scan it in digitally and do your manipulation for your client, and then at the end of the day have a traditional painting that you can sell on the secondary market, an original one-off. And that, there's nothing like that. I mean, that's a luxury, and it's something I really try to encourage the younger guys to get good at traditional as well, because you don't want to hang your hat on anything 100%. And digital, as wonderful it is, it'll never command the price of fine art originals, oils, things like that. It just never will. In my opinion, I really highly unlikely it ever will get there. But you know, so it's nice to be able to do both for different reasons.
We have another question.
Sure.
Richard Neely would like to know, how dry does the paint need to be before you can start blending the tile shapes?
How dry does it need to be?
Yeah.
It dries almost instantaneously. A couple seconds, 20 seconds, it probably would be dry enough to be able to manipulate. So yeah, it literally almost dries faster than you can even, while you're looking at it, it's dry. So that's one thing that's so cool about it. You can move so fast. It's a very fast medium once you're good at it. Now I'm mixing up some gouache in my little Iwata here. And when you mix in one of these wells, you just kind of have to eyeball it. There's no real sign. I mean, it's not, you know, it's kind of very intuitive. And since I'm using it just to darken up areas and glaze back areas, I'm not so concerned about it being perfect. And I don't like cutting Friscuits. Used to do that. It's just not my thing. So I use a French curve, and I just basically use it to mask off areas that I don't want to get a lot of spray over. And you're going to get a little bit of spray over, and I'll show you in a minute. Sometimes that can work to your advantage, because it actually, you can pick back out the gouache, almost like a pick out, oil pick out, and it makes for incredibly nice little subtleties. So with this, I'm just going through and picking areas that I want a little darker, like the outside of the mouth, the little node there, also on the other side. So I'll just hit a little overspray there, maybe knock back part of the bottom, some of the hot spots in the necklace. Just giving it a good dust over like that. Now again, you see all my darks, or my lights got a little darker because there's a veil of tone that was put over the top of them. But now I can go back and pick back out some of my hot spots. For example, on that little earring out here, I can just take a little bit of water and just pick it right back out and get that shimmering look again. I can do this pick out right in there, Again, I'm starting to get that subtlety that I'm looking for, and I had a brush that was a little too big, so I switched over back to a 1, which is really the smallest one I have right now. I want the little chin highlight, which is a little more pronounced on him. He has a cleft chin, but I have not really fully got that incredibly well. I mean, it's okay, but it's a little different on his. He's got that kind of upper lip that's like mine. I have a lip like that too. It's like a bird lip, chicken lips. It's a little skinny upper lip.
Another question.
Yeah.
Gail Franklin would like to know, if you mess up and make a mistake, say the wrong value, can you keep layering over the error? Do you have any secrets to fixing common errors for us beginners in gouache?
Yeah, in gouache, when you make an error, like say you're out here in a light area of the face, and you mix a value that's say 2 or 3 stages too dark, like you just really flub it. You come in way too dark in what's supposed to be a light. Rather than taking a light and covering it, which you could do, which would temporarily solve the problem. I say temporarily because at some point you want to assume that you might do some blending. Now if you go to blend that area later, it looks like there's nothing underneath it, but what's underneath it is the dark mistake that you made. When you go to do that, it'll come right back through to the surface, and it'll give you a blotchy dark spot right where you wanted it to be light, and that's really frustrating. And so rather, if you do a mistake like that, my suggestion is to take a brush and some water and wet that area and take a rag and blot it out, wet it again, scrub around on it, wet it out until it's back to a stain. Once it's in its stained form, it won't reactivate very easily. So then you can replace it with the proper value and you'll be safe. But that's kind of how you have to fix mistakes like that. Now, if you make a mistake in a dark area and you want to put a dark over that area, then it's not that big of a deal because you're putting a dark on top of a dark, and that's not going to affect it much when you reactivate it. So in that situation, you're going to be probably okay. Or same thing with light on top of light. It's when you go light on top of dark that you get in a lot of trouble. Now down here, I lost a lot of the cha-ching on the little necklace, so I'm going to go back and pick out some of the spots, and then I'll add a little to it as well and try to get it. Now again, this is not a jewelry study, so I'm not going to spend a ridiculous amount of time down here on the necklace, but I don't want it to be quite as blown out as I've done it with all that spray over. So I'll kind of go back in and do a combination. I'm almost done with this one. And again, it's just to kind of show you a basic, quick indication painting of a Frazetta head study. I still got to get back in those eyes and pick them back out because now they're really lost in the sockets. So I'll go back here. I want to put a little bit of hot spot on some of the jewelry. And again, like that little cut in his nose, he's got a scar. Try to get a little indication of that. Some little indications down here. So I'll start and then dry brush, kind of flick with the brush. The colors are not exact, but it's quite similar in some ways as far as it's cool looking. I like it. It has that kind of Frazetta look. It's not a forgery, but nor am I intending it to be such. So I'm not too worried about it being totally perfect. But I do, and again, I know what I'm working against and what I'm trying to accomplish. And for me, you just have to kind of know that going in and not have unrealistic expectations of what it is you're trying to accomplish, but have fun doing it and see if you can, all that kind of good stuff. Let me see, maybe more of a Okay, so the highlights in the eye are anything but highlights. So probably a real dingy gray, and then I got to go in and just ever so slightly indicate something going on in that eye. Okay, so I'm about to take a little break here. Let me see what I have on the timer. I have about 4 minutes left, but I think I went a little over. So let's kind of call this one so I can get to the other ones. But that's a cool little Frazetta head. And I'm going to come back and do a Leyendecker girl's head, which is really kind of cool one with blue light and warm and cool light, very extreme. Right now I'm just softening the outside of his hair a little bit. And so we'll be back in about 5 minutes or so. So thanks for tuning in and just enjoy the little break. And I'll come back and do a little bit more for you. And again, just keep asking questions and keep firing them at me, and I'll see what I can do to answer them as best I can. But great medium, really fun. So hope you're enjoying. I'll be back in a second. Okay.
Somebody was suggesting we could have a look at the palette during the break. Tilt the camera over.
Yeah, I can just put these here. I can just kind of lean it up. So yeah, I'll put the palette up. There's not much to look at really, but you're more than welcome to. Hopefully that won't. Usually that'll stick pretty good. Gouache sticks pretty well. So if I kind of put the light down here on it,
Yeah.
that's the palette and what it looked like. It's palette always looks good, and how it works on the actual painting can then. It's the harmonies on the painting are most important, so they always look good on the palette. It's where you're putting it on the painting that will look different. So it might look dramatically different than what it looks like on your palette when you get it on your painting. So the painting will be the final. It's the final thing, So I'll be back in a second, and we will continue. Is that cool?
Right on.
I am, so I'm not going to play it yet. Make sure you're recording it on the camcorder, but I have no idea how that...
Yeah, I got that.
You got it? Okay.
It was like a couple of minutes in. Saw that.
Yeah, well, I would have never got that one. Yeah. That's funny. That's what makes out my ankles. do that shorter study there. That was a 2.5 hour. I was going to do that. One cow.
The big one?
Yeah, that was for a class.
Really?
Class demo. Yeah.
It's not say the same for this.
What's that?
You cannot say the same.
We cannot say it.
No, we're really looking forward to doing some similar studies with her, right?
Yeah, they're fun to do. And you want to do them when you're a student because you don't have time when you're working professional.
No.
You just have no time.
Get them a lot of the way down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you can, just, do them. I was happy I did as many as I did when I was younger. But, man, it'd be so nice to be able to paint, kids like that on the beach, but man, now.
I know. You'd be so much trouble.
Yeah, you would. John Sauer was always getting in trouble for going out and taking pictures and stuff.
Oh, yeah, so.
Yeah, because he painted a ton like that were just
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay. Should we get back into it?
Yeah, we had a couple of
Questions?
questions.
Okay, guys, I'm coming back. So the next one is going to be a Leyendecker female. It's a very challenging little one, so I hope I do okay on it. But let us see. Okay. So I'll show you the reference ahead of time, so you'll not totally in the dark here. Let's get this up a little bit now that we're. So this is the reference, and again, it's not a great printout because it was from online, and I would like to paint from my screen, but I'm using my laptop to stream and answer questions. So that's kind of the reference that I'm going to be using, right? So it's not great, but I have painted once before, and I wanted to just show you because I think it's so nice with the combination of the extreme warms on the right side and then this beautiful teal kind of turquoise on the left side. The cool and the warm combinations is really fun to kind of play with. So I've got a very tiny little painting here. I think I did the other one a little bit bigger than that, but anyway, this should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and clip this on, and then I'll get to work on it. So the Frazetta is good. It's a little on the dark side, but overall respectable under the circumstances. So I'm cool with it. Hopefully you guys are getting something out of it. Let's see. Okay. So normally I'll get that thing up on my knees. Let me get an hour on here and let me sit it this time. Okay, so we're going. Get up on my knee at an angle like that, and I'm going to be right in this area going at it here. So let me get some brushes. Alright. Okay. Should be good. There's my trusted, there's the 3. Okay, so good. A couple of those. Looking for, yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to go at it, and I'm going to lay on a wash again. The backside being that blue-green, I'm going to use phthalo green and dilute it down. And again, now in Winsor Newton, so I usually either use Winsor Newton or Graham. Holbein makes a really nice one as well. So for gouache, for most of the time I used Winsor Newton, and I preferred Winsor Newton. My dad used it pretty regularly as well. And then I switched to Graham, which uses more of a honey instead of a gum arabic for its binder. And again, I'm not like ridiculously astute at the technical properties of gouache. There's not a lot of great books on gouache out there that I've seen. Very few and far between. Because the medium, again, it just wasn't written about that much in its prime. And then now that it's not used as much, it doesn't get written about much as well. So I think this probably will be one of your better places to learn about it if you are inclined to do so. Now again, I'm just going to start going right at it here. This is a little bit of white mixed with that. Even a little bit more. I'm going to make quick work of her back here just to try to get it laid in quickly and efficiently while it's still wet. So I'll move it around. This is still damp up here. So we'll start with something like that. Now, yes, it looks odd because it's right next to the white and everything, but just early on in the painting, so not too worried.
So much better, but my glasses
Glenn, how you doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks. How's your drawing going over there?
Not great.
Not great.
No.
Uh-oh.
What this week?
Deep breaths.
Yeah, deep breaths. Calm thoughts.
Calm thought, exactly. Go to your happy place. So yeah, we have an open workshop, as you guys always hear, going on at the same time. So you have some people meandering around, which is cool. And again, it's like if you were at the atelier, this is what would be going on. So I know a lot of people want to be dead quiet and this and that, but it's all good. So again, on the face, on the warm side, I'm going with a predominantly orangey, reddish kind of hue and just kind of knocking away the white of the canvas with that. And it's picking up a little bit of the graphite, which chalks it up a little bit, but not so much as to be a problem. The warmth kind of slips through the hair and ends up a little bit in the corridor over here. So we'll have to go over the top of that blue or blue-green in a minute. The shoulder is kind of, again, the warmth on the face is really not that warm. I would consider it actually a cold, but because it's so cold on the backside, it looks even, it looks kind of even a little bit more so. It's a little bit of mauve or purple that kind of, you can't see it as much on this reproduction, but I do remember it because I remember it being very beautiful as a transition between the warmth of the shoulder and the cold of the back. So in a minute I'll try to get a little of that seeping through there. Again, it'll be extremely subtle. But
Does it feel like, can you feel something?
We have a question from President Chube.
okay. All right.
Thanks for doing another stream, Jeff. They're really helpful. Will you do a stream showing the abstractions and talking us through the Riley method sometime?
Possibly. Again, it's that is not a couple-hour thing. So I mean, took me to really get a grasp on that Riley abstractions. Took me probably 5 to 10 years of working from life regularly with it. I know no one wants to hear that, but it took a long time to fully comprehend what that system is. Proficiency in it, a couple years. But as far as, I can probably do something at some point, but it probably would be more of I'd probably have a quick sketch model come in or something and just do quick sketch. Because really quick sketch is the domain of the abstraction. It'll get quiet here in a minute as when the workshop gets back going next door. So maybe I'll just paint during this time because it's going to be too hard to talk over the noise. But I'll resume answering questions here in a few minutes when it quiets down. So that's kind of my stain. I want to put the black background in, and I want to get in pretty early to just set off that piece. So I'm taking straight black, a little bit of red, a little bit of phthalo green, and just going in and really knocking in. Try not to get my head in front of the camera, but it might.
You get so dirty. I used to have to bike in the rain. I couldn't see anything.
Oh, it's funny when you go to a bar and there's fog up.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through. This is really going to set off the,
My brother used to have those.
that luminosity. With the white background, it just doesn't get any pop, and you don't get the drama of this particular piece.
I don't do those though.
Yeah, I do that.
Don't go outside. So
Guess there's a solution, just don't have an active last time. That's the way your glasses won't
That's
fall
my
off.
strategy.
From the couch, it won't fall off.
Nothing bad can happen.
Okay, so I'm just basically trying to get this in as quickly and efficiently as possible. Now around the hair, there's all kinds of really cool crisp edges. I mean, not when I say cool, not temperature, but just good, cool looking, nice looking. Hopefully my slang isn't completely confusing you guys. So I'm going to go around the back side here. Some of this I can pull back out of the dark or over the top of it. So I'm not too worried about getting every little edge around the hair shape too perfect.
Sunset Quest, take this.
Don't worry about it all the time.
Oh, you don't.
I don't know right now. It's the first time I've ever tried it.
I can hear you over there, Pavel. Got my bartender ears on. Okay. So that's kind of my little surrounding element. I don't really need a clean outline around it. I actually kind of like it kind of vignetted and fragmented and dry brushy as it goes out of way because it's supposed to be a study. I want it to look like a study. It's not going to be, I don't want it to be precious and all clean. So let's go in there and I'm going to do the darks now. And the darks in the hair are kind of a brown red, pretty dark. So I can take that dark puddle I already have and I'll add a little bit of red to it, maybe pull it to the side a little bit. And again, I know you can't see it, so that's why I'm talking you through it a little bit. And then I still got to be careful because that black around her head is still wet. I can still see some glare off of it, which is going to cause some problems. So now what I need to do is build up a layer of paint. Right now it's all stains, and stains don't reactivate, so I need to replace the stains with opaque versions of tone. And so I'm starting to thicken my paint up a little bit, not as much water, a little bit more pigment. And now I'm going to go in and inject into these masses that I've drawn in ahead of time. So I've created a little grid for myself, and I'm not going to try to track every one of his little abstractions of hair shapes. They're too daunting, complex to do. You could, but it would take you an awfully long time. And I think it's kind of like, not being able to see the forest through the trees. It's just, let's make abstractions that are similar. That way we're kind of also creating our own version of a Leyendecker. Thus thinking almost more like him than copying him, because we're actually creating a version of it that's slightly different but still looks like him. And that is what really I think the master studies really should embody, is that individuality should also be part of it. And not, again, getting lost in this idea that we're doing master studies that are supposed to be forgeries. We just want it to feel like one. So after we're done with it, someone should look at it and go, yeah, it feels like a Leyendecker. Not that is a Leyendecker. I don't know if Leyendecker could copy his own pieces to the degree of exactness that he created them in the first place. Close, but it would still be hard because some of the spontaneous shapes that are being created, although on him it's not quite the same as like Nikolai Fashion or something, who has broken color where he picks up 5 or 6 colors on a brush or a palette knife and then puts it down. There's no way to premeditate what's going to happen in that situation. And there's no way to duplicate it a second time straight. So he would be one that's almost impossible to create a forgery of his work. He couldn't even do it. So it's kind of interesting. Some styles are so clean and so straightforward that they're really tailor-made for making a forgery of them. Because as long as you're technically incredibly proficient, you probably can mimic exactly, because there aren't a lot of broken color and abstractions and brush strokes and things like that that are that unique. So you can duplicate a Vermeer. I'm not saying it's easy, but you could do it. Fetching, not so much so. Those kind of painters. So.
We have a question from G Castro 3D.
Uh-huh.
They say that gouache closely resembles digital painting in Photoshop. Have you done any digital painting, and do you agree with this statement?
Yeah, I've done a little bit, but not much. But everyone, when I look at Craig Mullins or I look at some of the painters that Jamie Jones, guys that I admire in digital, they look a lot like gouache paintings. And my dad has done a bit of gouache painting and not gouache, but digital. And I can't tell. He was actually, my dad got offered a visual development lead position at Rockstar not that long ago, and he's in his 70s now. But when he was showing them his work, he was showing them gouache paintings, and they thought they were digital. They didn't even know that they weren't digital. I mean, you really couldn't tell the difference. I had a hard time telling the difference. So to me, yeah, gouache mimics, or digital mimics gouache, mostly because in digital, from what I understand and what I've seen, the brushes are kind of custom made, obviously, and you're using stamp tools and all kinds of different techniques to get, this kind of sensitivity that brushes have a tendency to give you a lot more easily, because they're just, the tactile sensitivity of the tools are a little bit more fine-tuned. Although digital's getting there, it hasn't quite reached that point of sensitivity that your tactile sensitivity of your hands has. So a lot of times, because the shapes are kind of crude and they're put on with brushes that don't have the maneuverability of a real brush, they have a tendency to look more blocky and a little bit more shape-driven, like gouache, the shapes that gouache gives you when it dries so quickly. So yeah, a lot of times I do see a lot of similarities in digital versus gouache, that they look very similar to me and handle somewhat in a layering process that's not that dissimilar in some ways. So right now I'm working through the hair, and I'm just trying to get, I'm working between stains and also more opaque passages, and working my way systematically up through just trying to, again, get little darker layers here and there, getting ready to, again, place more opaque on top. But I'm just inching my way up, just like I would in an oil painting. Not very dissimilar. Or it's not much, it's quite similar, actually, in many ways. So, okay.
We have a question from Jan Stevenson.
Okay.
Does gouache paint dry and reconstitute so paint doesn't lose its pigmentation? And can you keep using and reusing it?
No, I mean, when like it dries on my palette, I can reactivate it to some degree, but it's very diluted and usually doesn't have a lot of body left in it when it's reactivated. So what I usually have to do is add pigment back into it. Like most oil paint or watercolor painters that are really good use watercolor only when it's wet. They don't use it when it's dry. Some do, but a lot of the best ones I know use it only when it's wet. And gouache is similar to me in that way. I only use it primarily when it's wet. You can keep it wet for a couple days if you wet it down consistently or put it in the refrigerator, or sometimes people will cover it and put it in the fridge, and that'll help it as well. But a lot of times it's more, for me, if I just, I throw out a little bit of it here, more than I would like, but because I don't paint in gouache every day. It's mostly, again, like a training tool, or I do my comps, my thumbnails for my fine art paintings are a lot of times done in gouache. So that's kind of, it's a comping medium for me now. When I say comping, it's a thumbnail idea generation medium for me. And also a training medium, like I said, to teach people how to think in shape and tiles and things of that sort. So for me, as far as keeping the paints wet, as far as, using them when they're dry, I will reactivate puddles while I'm working in the process of like tonight, and then add paint to them. So I am constantly reactivating these puddles. So I don't normally clean my palette religiously when I'm painting in gouache, because I'll use those puddles to create stains or to reactivate areas and things like that, and use that in my painting.
We have another question from Gail Franklin. When you complete these studies, is there a way to help preserve the freshness of the painting? Do you spray some kind of sealer or just leave it as is?
Because these aren't precious to me. I mean, I've sold them to people like friends and stuff, and that like studies like this, but it really isn't something that I'm terribly worried about as far as its longevity. And so a lot of times they are what they are. I mean, I have put gouache paintings in galleries and matted them and framed them really well, and I don't usually use spray fixative on them, although you can, because I don't like the way it darkens up a lot of the colors and stuff. I like that kind of matte feeling that gouache has. It's just something I've always liked about it. So I don't normally do that, but I have seen people do that, and you can seal the painting that way and protect it somewhat from getting exposed to water or dampness or things that might reactivate the paint or cause problems. But normally it's almost similar to pastel in the way that you have to get it under glass and get it matted ultimately to get it into a more protective state. So I would normally say that that's your best bet if you're using gouache a lot, is to get it matted and it does cost money and it is expensive, and you know, that's one thing that, you know, from a professional standpoint, that, you know, differs a little bit from oil, because it doesn't command as high a price and it's more expensive and difficult to prepare, similar to pastel. But again, you'll find gouache painters throughout history, and there's still guys that use it professionally. Gordon Schnittau and some of the Chinese painters are really good in it, and they use it in fine art. So you will still see some people using it. And I've, like I said, put it into shows. I put it in, whenever I have a one-man show in galleries, I usually will show some more obscure areas of my skill sets, inking. I've been known to put inks in, brush inks, quill inks, as well as charcoal drawings, graphite drawing, charcoal drawing mixes, gouache. And I like that. I just think might as well, I mean, you know, mix it up a little bit. The fact that nobody's doing it is kind of cool. I mean, to me, I don't want to be doing what everyone else is doing. I'm not trying to be a hardcore contrarian, but that's kind of in my nature, to go against what is happening. It's always seemed to work well for me. If it's really popular right now, then it's probably on its way out. So by the time you get ramped up in it and start doing it, it's probably not even going to be in vogue anymore. So better to try to look for areas that aren't being fully exploited and explored. And it's a little harder road to hoe when you're trying to build a name in it or trying to get people to be interested in it. But sometimes you can take an old medium or an old technique that is somewhat passé, maybe didn't get its full recognition during the time when it was first used. You could reinvent it, re-inject it into the professional arena and get another bang out of it, or get some more play out of it, even maybe better than when it was first used, and got maybe just not the fair credit that it deserves or something. So I'm always looking for old obscure techniques, old styles that haven't been tapped out. If you're trying to have longevity as a painter, you want to be honest with what you paint, you want to love what you paint, you want to be passionate about it, but you also want a technique that has longevity. A lot of techniques that are simple to duplicate will be constantly being borrowed or ripped off by other people. And that's not a big deal. You don't own a style, but it is frustrating when you have this great style and then 52 people start mimicking almost exactly. But that being said, that everyone struggles with that has a nice style that they come up with. Because, you know, most of us artists are emulators. We do train through emulation. So we're good at ripping off ideas and borrowing other people's techniques. And there's really nothing fundamentally wrong with that. I have a little bit of a beef when people just gank or steal people's styles wholesale. I mean, just exact. I think, you know, have a little bit of scruples and try to come up with something a little more unique. But that's just me. A lot of people say I paint like Fetchin, which is actually quite an honor for them to say that. It's not like I'm insulted by that. He's one of the best painters. So for me, it's very, you know, but I'm not trying to be Fetchin, you know, I just like his stuff a lot. So I'm heavily influenced by him, but I have no interest in becoming him. So, you know, whether people say that or not, I mean, someone's always going to be trying to compare you to somebody or trying to lump you into some group. And that's okay. That's okay. It's just part of the deal. But I'm saying I like to pick styles personally that I work in that are so difficult that not many people will try to steal them, because it's very difficult to do. So I gravitate towards those Fetchin styles or things like that that I find you know, might have a little bit more long-term longevity from a professional standpoint as well. And again, I'm a competitive person, but not negatively so. So in art, I think healthy competition is incredibly good, but not malicious competition. You know, and there are people out there that aren't so cool about stuff. But anyway, it's one of those things. So something to think about. Okay. So again, going in, inching my way up with all these little intricate curves and swirls and hair interlocking and intertwining in and out of itself, warm to cool, and trying to just start building the effect that looks like his effect. Anything going on over there?
Nope.
All right. So again, the face right here, I've got to get in there and start getting the nostrils. It's a profile, which is nice, which means you don't have as much stuff to do. So it goes a little faster, and we're going to need extra time on that hair. So it's kind of nice to not have to be matching up eyes and doing all that kind of stuff, and more. Yeah, the Frazetta head, now that I'm looking at it, is awfully dark. Holy. So not bad, just a little too too dark for my total taste, but it's okay. It is what it is. So as we're doing these things, I'm always thinking, okay, I always want to do the best job I can, but most importantly, I want to convey information, knowledge and information. And so when I'm in school teaching, I teach, and also when I'm filming online, I'm always talking this much or even more, which can be a little, I mean, sometimes people can put me on mute if they're really having an issue with it, but I found that it's usually pretty helpful to get inside the artist's head and hear their inner dialogue. And some artists are really good at doing that, and some are not so good at doing it. And again, it's kind of an art. It's a right-left brain activity, so you have to kind of be firing from both hemispheres, which can be a little challenging. But it is really good for people to kind of hear what it is you're thinking about when you're actually going through these problems. Again, just mixing up little, pink areas for the cheeks, and then the skin tone's like a little bit of white with a little cad yellow light in it, or lemon yellow, and that's giving me that kind of almost Naples yellow kind of look, and that's kind of what I see her skin tone in the light on the warm side being, and it carries into the forehead as well, so I could use that same color. Now it's very close to the stain that I originally put down, but now I need to replace it with an opaque version so that I can prepare to do some blending in a little bit. And so that carries down the front of the nose as well. The inside of her eye socket is very red, and so I'm kind of mixing up a little orange, little flame red or cad red light. Either one would work good. Flame red is a Winsor Newton color. It's a cheap red, but very nice, and cad red is obviously going to be more expensive. Since gouache really isn't vibrant, even in the cadmium range, it still suffers a little bit from lack of vibrancy. That's why a lot of people kind of struggle with it a little bit. They try to get it to be really this ridiculously vibrant medium, and it really just doesn't have that punch to it as much. So again, you'd want to go to oil for that, or digital. But if you needed that punch, you could just easily, again, get it into Photoshop and then just manipulate it a little bit to get your colors a little bit more punchy, if that's what your client wants. If you're working for Blizzard or someone like that likes a little bit more saturation in their pieces and a little bit more oomph and punch to the piece, then you'd want to maybe take it in and do a little of that with it.
There's some more good questions here.
Okay.
Sebastian Wolf is asking, how transferable is the tiling method to oils? Anything amateur painters should be on the lookout for when making the leap between the two with regards to behavior?
Yeah, I mean, basically that's what I use it for, is to help prepare people for turning form in oil using a juxtaposition of warm and cool tiles. And when I say a tile, it doesn't mean a square tile like a floor tile. It means a shape. It could be amoebic, it could be curved, it could be triangular, it could be rectangular, it could be somewhere in between. It's really just taking the anatomy of the body or the head or the figure and distilling it down into a specific indication. But in oil, the paint wants to go really gooey and wants to go soft on you very quickly. And that can be very disconcerting if you don't have control over your brushes, your hand dexterity is not very good, you're struggling with all these things. When you go to paint in oil, it's going to turn into a mud bath. Now, mud, meaning grayed color, is not evil. It's actually quite important. It's the glue that keeps the paintings together. That's what the old saying is. Grays are the glue that keeps the color or the painting working. And so you need grays. You want grays, but you don't want, there's a certain kind of grays that are productive, and there's other ones that are dead and kind of aren't harmonizing well with their surroundings. Very difficult to discern or even really talk about exactly what the difference is between the two, because they're very subtle. But most painting is a very subtle craft, so it's not these huge dichotomies, it's these very subtle nuances and subtleties that we have to tune into and learn to adhere to and respect. So Yeah, gouache. I use gouache in our school to prepare people for the rigors of oil in a controlled manner with a medium that's very forgiving. Oil, not so much so. In some ways it is, but the nice thing about gouache is you can start a gouache painting, say you have a difficult lifestyle, or you work a lot, or you can't get, oil, you have to work it in stages, and if you miss an opportunity to do a certain effect with it, you're not going to be able to get it. Once it dries, it's dry, and there is no getting that back, that opportunity to get that effect that you wanted. Gouache never dries permanently, so you're always able to manipulate it, go back and peck around on it, play around with it. So if you have a complicated style, then you can easily always have a gouache going and not worry about whether it's drying or did it dry, and am I going to be able to get that the subtlety around the eyeballs that I wanted, or the subtlety in certain aspects of the face. And in oil, you'd have to drop everything and make the time to hit that painting at exactly the right time to get the effect that you want. Otherwise, you're never getting it. So that's where oil and gouache are so different as far as their luxurious qualities of being able to paint whenever you want, not worry about it drying. It's a great travel medium. Gouache is. It travels really well. And so, if you go on a trip, I mean, you can get water anywhere. Gouache tubes are tiny. The brushes are easy to transport. So oil, I mean, you've got to get Gamsol and or turpentine when you get to your destination. It's hard to find in a lot of countries. You can find yourself really in a pickle with oil, whereas in gouache, man, no problem. So I like it for so many different reasons. But yes, it does prepare you for oil, and that's what we use it for. And it will transfer very nicely. You'll find yourself painting more diligently and more carefully, and with more forethought, more planning when you come from a tactical medium like gouache, which is similar to watercolor, where layering is a little bit different but taxes you. It's a more patient medium in some ways. Oil painted at a high level of tightness can also have that same difficulty, obviously. But anyway, that's kind of my take. Hopefully that answered your question.
Jay Ham would like to know, is it possible to get subtle gradations without the use of an airbrush?
Yeah, it's just hard. It takes time. A lot of times, water glazing, which means to take areas and kind of work through, like I was doing a little bit on the Frazetta, but when you're working this fast, it's very difficult to get that without using some trick, not tricks so much, but tools like an airbrush. But you can, you can get them for sure. My dad kind of doesn't like the airbrush much and doesn't really, he uses it a little bit, but he has one and he does use it, but he's apt more to try to get the effects just manually through disciplined layering. And yes, you can do that. So it is possible. It's just difficult. You need time. You need patience. You need to just keep reworking the edges on the painting over and over again. So it just takes a little time to bring up a painting like that.
We have another question here from Mr. Greg Goodman.
Goodman. How you doing, Greg?
He wants to know, what are you going to teach in the landscape gouache class next term?
Does this be good? Good, Greg. Greg's a great guy. He's a student of mine and a wonderful, good friend. He actually is the one that has built the site, the online site, and is responsible for this, a lot of this stuff coming together. So in the landscape gouache, I'm going to be teaching different kind of layering, a lot of dry brush, a lot of composition, building up layers. Again, it's a very layering heavy, landscape's very heavy in layering. So we'll be working a lot with that. Whereas instead of tiling, we won't tile as much. There may be aspects of tiling in certain areas, but we're really going to be working on building up a watercolor type painting and then building it into opacity and bringing it up very similar to an oil painting, landscape oil painting. So yeah, it's a really fun class. Anything's fair game. Cityscapes, futuristic scenes, someone could push it into more of a concept type scenario. Rivers, streams, snowscapes, seascapes, whatever you fancy. I'm up for anything. But it's great. It's a lot of fun. It's I don't teach it very often, maybe once in a while. but I love teaching it. It's just there's so many other things that need to be taught as well that I only get around to it once every couple of years or something. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Greg. That's funny. Some funny stuff. There's a cut line in the back of her hair that I'm missing. I don't like that. I want to cut in a little bit right there. Take a chunk out of that. A little bun she's got in the back here.
I did more like fancy and more stuff like years ago. But then the teacher thinks I'm wrong with it. That's pretty good. And I'm back into what I used to do. I enjoy it more. The teacher thinks that up and down. So it's good for last week.
Okay, so I'm doing some water blending in the hair, and I'm gonna do some airbrush in a minute, and then I'm gonna continue to work up the layers here.
No, you can't.
What's going over there, Jeff? No, I'm just. How are you doing?
Oh, this is a treat.
Let's go and sit there,
Also,
hanging out and watching a little gouache.
No, this
just trying to bring gouache back, you know.
Yeah, just trying to fight the good fight. Okay, so the little head here, I mean, again, it has all kinds of little issues, which is fine, just things that haven't been dealt with yet, little areas that need to be addressed. Punching up the orange a little bit on the left side of the nose. Some areas in the hair too that I'll get back to in a minute, but okay, let's pull our airbrush out for a second. So I've got some brown in there that's already there. Might work for a little bit of it. Oh. So again, I get my French curve out. Okay, I'm just looking for little areas I want to darken up a little bit. Okay, that's kind of a watery substance. I have a little too much water in the well there, so I'm going to go for a little bit more. You know, just a little bit less water, a little bit more pigment.
very complicated.
Mixing a little bit of a gray-green. And I'm just going to see if I can... I mean, the subtlety I have there is almost exactly the subtlety I want, so I don't know if I want to... It's too much, but I'll soften it out in a minute with my... So airbrush, again, is just a really great little tool, very similar to some effects you would get with again with digital. They don't cost too much. You can usually find them pretty cheap. I use a like a CO2 tank instead of a regular, one of the loud old school compressors that just are annoying as hell. So this is a great, nice, quiet way to work. You get a regulator, you get an Iwata, and you get one of those tanks. And usually you can get them refilled where they refill the fire department's tanks, or tanks for scuba diving, places like that. And you can basically, my dad's always used it that way, and it's nice not to have, again, that, that chugging along of that happens when you're using an actual compressor. Now this is just a light mint green. I'm going to use just get that kind of glowing look of the nice. Little skin tone. Now, again, you can get that gradation by hand. It just takes longer to do, and you would do it through water glazing and working your way through those transition areas. But just a quick hit with airbrush to kind of tone it and get it keyed in a little bit can be very helpful from a speed factor if you're working a little faster, or you find yourself working faster in a job or something. So I'll go back in, and with that spillover, I can just take the water and re-water the area, and it's going to take that veil of white that got sprayed over and remove it. So it's going to get really dark again just by putting a little water over it. So if I don't like that white spillover and I want to get it back, I can use both that, or I could actually even just inject back in some pure black and really get that back to really, I want that to be really dark around her shoulder and her dress there. So I'm going to go back in, clean up this edge right here.
We have a good question from Jay Han.
Okay.
He wants to know, any chance you can talk your father into painting for us as well? Perhaps a Watts paint duel.
Yeah, maybe. He's pretty up for most things, and I haven't really these kind of Friday night live things are a little bit newer, and we're just playing around with them right now and kind of seeing how they go and how people like them and stuff. So, yeah, I definitely would approach him at one point and see if he would demo, and I'm sure he will. He's just an amazing demoer, incredibly fast, incredibly good. Just so seasoned, been around doing it for so freaking long, and just knows this medium inside and out, as well as oil and so many other things. So yeah, I'll see if I can get him one of these days to do that. I'm sure he'll be up for it. I just don't know when exactly I could. It's really up to him. So, but yeah, I'll look into it. No worries. Okay. Now I'm going back into the darks in the hair that got swallowed up with some of that spray over, and I'm just re-establishing them. Now I've created some abstractions of shapes that aren't in Leyendecker's painting, but that are kind of nice and Leyendecker-ish, and so I may try to preserve those. And again, it'll give the painting a look of a Leyendecker, but not necessarily the exact look of that Leyendecker. But that being said, I mean, we've already talked about why that is and all that kind of good stuff. So. Let's go with a little bit more. Again, this would be a nice, phase that you would probably go to if you were working online, maybe after about a year or so. I mean, it would take a while to get to this one. You'd want to work through black and white gouache. You want to work through the Zorn palette. You want to work into the warm and cool palette, and just straight portraiture, learning tiling, learning to turn form with temperature. And then ultimately, again, the way I've designed the original or the course is the way I would like to see people normally navigate this in our own school. But unfortunately, with people's crazy lifestyles and all the stuff going on, they seldom can even do it when they're in town here, because they can't take night classes, or they can only take morning classes, or they can only take night classes, or whatever the case may be. There's always this issue with being able to navigate the school properly. So a lot of people are jumping into classes way prematurely in some ways than they and it's not like it's going to kill them or anything. It's just going to create undue frustration and some issues with that kind of stuff. So I always, when I created the online, it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to put it down the way I think I always wanted it to go, but have seldom been able to see it happen because of, again, people's schedules not being accommodating. And so that's kind of what I was always after with this whole new period of designing this new program, was to try to, make it even better than the original, our school. Although there will always be a charm to being at the school and getting to work with us in person. There's no substitute for that to some degree. But for many people that can't make it to the school, and never probably will because they can't move their life to San Diego, it's kind of a godsend for those people in a way. I mean, because otherwise I don't know really what they would be doing. It's very difficult to get this information. It's not that accessible. Okay, so getting that shoulder a little bit nicer. Some of the tiles in the face need to now be addressed a little bit, like blended out, like I'm doing. The likeness is okay. It's not going to win any awards for best likeness or anything, but it's a nice little head. It's very has a lot of Leyendecker feel to it, I think. So again, I've got some spray over in the hair that I can go back in with my brush and some water and pick out a fair amount of it. But if that doesn't do the complete trick, which it probably won't, I'll add some white, little lemon yellow, cat yellow light, whatever you want to, whatever your poison is there, whatever you got. So then I added a little bit of phthalo, but that made it too green. A little bit more white, a little bit more yellow, a little bit more white. And now I've got, I think, what's going to create, that kind of nice hot spot mint green in that hair. So I'm kind of going down. He has these little, almost like waves in an ocean, swirls that he does in and out of the hair on females when the hair is pulled back in a bun like that. That makes for very nice shapes. I'll kick a little bit of that over the top of the bun here in the back. Maybe create, again, a little bit of hair like he does. He does these little splintery shapes coming off the hair shapes. Shoot through some of these warmer areas with that green. Let the green kind of slip over into and interact with the warm side, and let the warm side slip over and interact with the cool side. You want usually one to be dominant over the other. You don't want both the warm and cool side competing with each other. So a lot of times you want to make sure, right here, it's subdominant on the cool and dominant on the warm. The back of the head is lit more subtly than the front. I mean, as far as the amount of ratio of warm to cool. When you get 50-50, it gets a little dicey. It can work. I've seen it done, but it's a lot dicier.
I have a question from Ben Barker.
Ben.
So Ben would like to know, how did you first get gallery representation?
Well, I mean, when I first started galleries, I was probably way too young in hindsight, and I was always kind of bucking the system as far as what I was supposed to be doing, or thought everyone said I was supposed to be doing. So that's just me, and I've paid the piper for it a couple times. But when I was young, I mean, I wanted to be a gallery painter. I always wanted to be a gallery painter, but I thought, okay, that's a lofty goal, and it may not happen immediately. So what am I going to do if I don't do that? Well, I had illustration going at the time, and that was really kind of more my bread and butter. And then teaching, for me, I was really good at, and never intended it to be a full-time career. Thought it would just be something I wanted to do for a period of time while I was waiting to get back into the movie industry or back into animation industry. So when I went to look at galleries, I was aware of them. I'd grown up with again a father that was a professional, and he had done some gallery work a little bit on the side of doing fine art during certain periods of me growing up. And I had set my goal in school to be a fine art painter ultimately, but thought that again would be a long-term goal. And I figured, getting representation by a gallery is really not that hard. Getting in a really good gallery that's going to build a career and a name for you and pay you on time is a whole other thing, So a lot of artists say, I'm in a gallery and I'm represented and that's great, but is it a good gallery and is it one that you can have a long-term relationship with? And sometimes, I've been in and out of huge galleries. I've been in and out of some of the biggest, most well-established galleries. I've also been in startups, and I've kind of been on both sides of the fence. And for me, when I started, I was lucky enough to be in downtown San Diego, and there was a gallery called Robson Gallery that was in downtown San Diego at the time, and it showed John Nassaro and Cher and Walt Gonski and all these really good painters. Happened to show in this little kind of small gallery in downtown San Diego, and I had my studio right up the street from it. And so I submitted my work, and I got in, and it was nice because I could walk my work down there. It was just so nice. My wife got a job there. She was in college and was going to San Diego State, and I was had my studio, my school downtown San Diego, and so I got lucky. But I went in and I showed her my work, and I had some good stuff, and she took me on. It was a 50-50 deal at the time, 50% to them, 50% to me, but I had to also provide the framing, which means it's more like a 60-40 in their favor. But it was good. It was the beginning, and that's usually how you start. You usually start 50-50, and then you got to kind of work your way up to better percentages as you get more demand, as you get more, as the gallery, if the gallery doesn't want to lose you and they're selling lots of your work, and then you have a little bit of leverage with which to say, okay, I've been with you for 2 or 3 years now. I think I deserve a 60-40 split or something. And a lot of galleries will not do that, or you might have to wait until your next gallery to be able to get that percentage better in your favor. But that's where I'm at right now, and it took me about 15 years to get there. So 70-30 split is really hard to get. But someone like, say, Howard Turpnine or of that caliber, or Richard Schmidt, might be able to get a 70-30 split, because the gallery knows they can sell the work so quickly. It's not that much work for them. They may be willing to take less of a cut. So again, the negotiation with galleries is mostly based on your reputation, how good you are, how much demand there is for your work, and it's supply and demand, just like anything else. So when you go into galleries, the first thing you want to do is you want to interview the gallery, not the other way around. I go in looking at the gallery and saying, do I want to show at this gallery? Does it show people that I respect? Does it show people that my work would look good with? Are they similar artists that I admire? So a lot of times I look at the galleries that show the people that I like the most. And those are the galleries I would like to show in, because they're the artists that I respect. So I'll wait to get in those galleries rather than just grab a gallery to grab a gallery. I've done that before. And so for me now, it's a very selective process. And when you go into the galleries, it's kind of a give and take. It's always a little difficult because the galleries are a little leery of you. You're a little leery of them. They've been burnt by artists. Artists have been burnt by galleries. So they both go in with a little bit of tentativeness about the whole business relationship. And that can be difficult when you're trying to produce very soulful work, and in the back of your mind you're wondering if you're going to get paid, or is something unscrupulous going to happen. It doesn't lend itself to doing the best work, right? It's kind of counterintuitive, counterproductive. But we all have to deal with that as fine artists. You have to kind of, again, try to be very respectful of the fact that running a gallery is very difficult. It's not easy business, and they have a lot of overhead, and they have a lot of footwork they have to do, and a lot of relationships they have to build with clients that they're going to sell your work to. And when they go to sell your work, they're basically saying you're great, you're going to be the next best thing, you're da-da-da, and you can't really do that for yourself because you sound like an idiot. Going out and saying, yeah, I'm the best painter ever, and oh my God, my stuff's worth all this money, and da-da. It just doesn't sound good. So you really need an artist going to bat for you, a gallery for an artist that can help to build your name, build your credibility. And they build your credibility through their credibility. So if it's a good gallery, people trust the gallery because they've been around a long time, they know what good work is, they represent good people, and they're going to be able to advise a collector on buying a piece that not only is something they like, but maybe something that'll be worth a lot in the future. So all those things have to be factored in, and that's why gallery work, I mean, the gallery industry is a very complicated industry. It's not, oh, I'm just going to go in and paint paintings and everything's going to be great and I'm going to be happy and everything's going to be rosy. No, it's business. It's a, if you don't sell, you're out the door. I mean, it's cutthroat, but you're most of art, for all of you out there that want to make a living at it, it's very simple. You make a living by making somebody else a living. You make DreamWorks a lot of money by producing whatever you do for them. Maybe you're a concept, a character designer. You're going to develop these little, characters that are very endearing. They're going to be put into a movie that's going to sell, millions and millions of dollars worth of tickets, and you're going to get paid $200,000 a year to do it. And they're going to get paid 20 million, 100 million. Well, they're the ones, I mean, that's the way it goes, but they're the ones fronting the money. They're the ones building the reputation. They're Disney, they're DreamWorks, and you're helping them to do that. So if you can't help them make money, then you can't make money, right? Because what's the point? The point is that they're trying to produce something, and you're supposed to help them do that. So in fine art, gallery owners own galleries to make money, not to be philanthropic towards artists and make them happy. So they want to sell artwork and make a bunch of money, and they want you to produce the artwork for them and sell it. And so they want a marketable style. They want it done quickly. They want lots of inventory. They want you to constantly give them paintings, new paintings. And so it's a business. It's not a, that's what it is. So if you come into art with more of a business mindset, respect the fact that it is a business, and don't expect it to be all rosy cozy, it can be really cool. And the key is for you as an artist to be good enough to be something that people need and want your product, your skill, your specialty, your style. And in order to do that, it has to be really good. I mean, it has to be good craftsmanship. There are painters out there that sling paint and put a big red dot on a canvas and charge $3 million for it, and that's fine. But that's a whole different thing, and that's a different area of art. And so I don't really normally delve that much into that area. I don't have a serious problem with it. It's just not my thing. So more power to them for being able to do that. If that what makes them happy and they like doing that and they're able to find a way to make a living at it, then more power to them, in my opinion. But I'm over in representational land where everything's supposed to look like something, and it's got to look nice because no one pays you to do ugly stuff. They just don't. So I have to make things look good. I have to find out why things look good. I have to understand why they look good and learn that. And then I have to apply that to my work so that my life drawings, my paint, anything that I do looks attractive. And if I do that correctly, there's a good chance that somebody will pay me money to do that for them. And that's where the business side of it comes in. So a lot of people say, do you teach business? And I'm like, well, be good. There's your business. Be better than your competition, and you'll have a good chance of making a good living. If you're not very good, and your skills are rocky, and you don't know perspective, and your anatomy's wonky, and your edges are out of control, and your color's not very good, and your composition stinks, what are you going to do with that? I mean, not much. And so it's just very common sense, really. So whenever I'd see somebody, I said, priority number one, get mad skills. Just get insanely skilled. And the rest kind of takes care of itself. Now, if you want to plug yourself into storyboarding, you want to plug yourself into animation, you want to plug yourself into visual development concepting, you want to do fine art landscape, yeah, these are specialty areas, and you will want to ultimately specialize in some of those areas. But as a student, you want to prepare yourself in a very well-rounded manner, knowing that you might be called upon to do all kinds of different things on your way towards your dream job, which is painting what you want, living where you want, making lots of money. Well, that's everybody. So that's the brass ring, That's a small percentage of people that will get to do that. And they will sacrifice greatly to get to do that. It won't just be handed to them on a silver platter. It's going to be hard effort, discipline, long-term focus, daily grind, and smart, intelligent, multitasking ability over a long period of time. And that's what you want to try to instill in your students, those abilities, because then they're going to do well. It's just a matter of time. But it will be time, and it will take time. So that's why I try to tell people, just be patient, get your skills, have fun doing it, try to dream big, but then be practical on the lower end where you have to actually make, a practical schedule for yourself. I mean, if you have, 2 kids, a mortgage, and I don't know, a lot of debt load, and you're trying to be a fine art painter, that's a hard road to hoe. I don't know if that's going to happen. Not saying it couldn't, but boy, that's an uphill battle right there. So, but I would never say to someone, "Oh, don't give it a shot." I would just say, be practical and pragmatic about it. Think about it, and just know what you're up against, and then go forward with respect to that, and factor all that stuff in, and you're being realistic and not idealistic. So that was a long answer, but sorry about that.
We have another one from Clockser.
Uh-huh.
I've never painted before, but I'm registered for the summer oil painting fundamentals class.
Awesome.
What should I do to prepare?
Again, you can always go online and do a month on the online program where I do a lot of fundamental classes. And I know it always sounds like a sales pitch for the online, but I am so stoked on that program. I believe in it so much, and I know how good it is. It would be stupid for me to talk so positively about it and then have you go on there and hate it. And I know that wouldn't happen. But if you are going to be coming in and you want to prepare ahead of time, then maybe sign up for 1 month. You can always cancel it. You don't have any long-term obligation to it. So in between now and when you start, go on and do some of the fundamental phase 1 Zorn palette portrait videos where I show you how to mix the Zorn palette and how to break it into 36 swatches, because that's even more rigid than what we do at our school. So you won't even see us teaching that at the school, the 36 swatch thing. We'll be teaching Zorn, but you'll be using 4 colors and having to mix all those varieties on your own. So I would go on there and prepare ahead of time. And if you like it, stay on it. And if you don't, and money's tight or something, cancel it once you get in class. So that's how I prepare for it. Because there's not a lot else I could help you with as far as without you being here and showing you stuff in real time.
Another question from Raphael Lucchini.
Oh, Raphael, how you doing?
Hey Jeff, when are the podcasts going to come out?
The podcasts probably in the next couple months. I've got a bunch of them that I want to do. I just have to prepare for them because they're going to be pretty cool. I want to do one on training and talking about training regimens and setting up proper training routines and long-term goals. And I'm going to also do like the book of the month, and I'll go through and pick a book that has been very inspirational to me, and I'll talk about what I like about it, what I learned from it, and most of them obviously art books, but some that will borderline on philosophy and self-help, not so much self-help, but self-motivation type learning, so that you can kind of get really motivated to get up for the game. And again, like Robert Henri's The Art Spirit, The Twilight of Painting is a good one. I mean, all these different books that, and I'm not a big reader, so I'm not incredibly well read, but I do have a very practical side of myself that is very good for grounding people in fundamentals. So we'll be doing that down the road. Probably look for that in the next, towards the end of summer, into fall, and then I'll be doing them once a month or once. I'll be alternating them probably between doing these live streams and the podcasts. Just topics. You guys can throw topics at me that you want to see me talk about. I'll probably take I'll let you guys send in some requests for things that you might want me to address. And we'll go from there. So anyway, this is my little Leyendecker head. It's decent. It's not, it is what it is, but I like it overall. It's got some good stuff going on. It's hard to look up at the Leyendecker and you see all these cool little shapes that are different than yours, and it's sometimes you want to go for those, but it's not absolutely necessary. So I'm happy with the general look of it. So we're going to leave it at that. I'm going to take a break. I'll be back in about 5 minutes, and I'll do a Dean Cornwell pirate vignette, which will be really cool. How does it taste? What's that? Is it wet? Oh, it's wet on it. Oh, it probably is, yeah. It's always going to be. Oh, yeah, it's a cool little head. It's a little head. Come on, Ricker.
No, it's still going.
Oh, the butt. Oh. Someone heard that, I'm sure.
Looking pretty good overall.
It's all, it's pretty old. Yeah, I like it, yeah, it's good. It's cheap, too. I mean, it should be cheap. It's good, yeah. It's very dry. It's drier than can be. It's good though. Yeah, I got both of them. I used them quite a bit while I was in school, but I haven't read it since.
Your game, I'm working on it.
The drawing one was probably better than the painting one.
I think
The
you had
painting
like
one,
a
we talked about monochrome painting,
style.
number painting, and the importance of it, and, but it's all in black and white. It's not in color, so that's only
Study turned out good, man.
Doesn't matter. But even the color section is a little hard. He has some good compositions. But I have to go back and read it again. I probably will, because I'll probably use it as an excuse during the podcast to allow me to force me to go through the book again. Because I know in a month I'm going to have to talk about it. So that'll be kind of fun for me to do that. I need some leverage on myself to go through some of the books. Really,
You're not felt that.
because I'm not a big reader. I just study visually. So I spend most of my time doing these kind of things.
Right? Why you use that time?
Well, getting used to seeing the value jump subtly as they go up towards the lightest lights, and since you've already graded the canvas, you already have that middle tone established. So in normal cases, in the future, when you're better at it, you could stain it gray or a color, and then establish immediately the lightest light and darkest dark, and then work between those extremes, and step around the whole thing to bring it on however you want. That's how you're able to but when you're just starting the medium, the last thing you need is all those variables. You need a system, and that system seems to be a really good one. It was the one that was tough to me, and I like it. So I've stuck with it.
Well, I tried to do it very cool to drum chants. I couldn't go really well.
Yeah, it's hard. Some people are just wired that way. I'm not. So for me to do that even close, is like
Not because of the lack of people, I couldn't see it. I mean, already I started way but then I had to go back and forth to see it.
yeah, that's understandable. So I mean, it's one of your first wash paintings, right? It's like, man, after you've done about 10 of those, you won't even think about that. It'll be like you'll be worried about something else. You'll be worried about abstract color notes or something, you know, and you'll not worry about values and sequences as much, and the way the paint mixes and how to get the proper ratio. You'll be past all that, and that's when you can get into the really fun part of gouache, which is exploring it, experimenting with it. How do you want to use it? Do you want to use it more dry brush? Do you want to use it more like Leyendecker or look like a Cornwell, or do you want to paint a little more painterly with it? But it won't have a huge amount of range as far as oil. As far as how you can work in it, but you can push it to look kind of like oil. Like, I mean, I've done little gouache days when I'm not worried about texture that look like little oil paints. Some of them are in my sketchbook. Like I did a little fetching study that looks kind of like to me like a little bit of a fetching. Yeah, you when I brought a sketchbook in or something, it was like my comps or something. So, but I don't do a lot. I mean, gouache to me now is really a training medium. I don't do that much with it. I mean, I wouldn't mind taking a whack at a huge one just for fun. Like if I get to the situation in my life where I don't have to worry about, you know, making as much as that, I'll probably do all kinds of wacky stuff.
But it's not really to work like
You could, but it'd be expensive.
more expensive than us.
Yeah, because you just say you treat it like each little area is its own painting, and you have to see it as a whole. But I thought of doing one that's like I did one that's this long, right? This probably about that big. A couple of them for our show recently. And they're racked in the back of my gallery, so we could try pulling them out if you want.
What was this actually?
That was for gouache. It was gouache.
What did you paint?
Oh, it was Western narratives, like Western mountain man stuff, like big storytelling type paintings. They were cool. But yeah, the biggest one was probably this long, about this high, about that long. It's pretty big gouache, you know. And so I did a number of those, and they came out really nice. They never sold or anything, but I still have them, and they are cool. Yeah, in the back. Stored, racked. But we can dig some of that stuff out and take a look around. I think it'll be kind of fun. Yeah. Yep. What are you doing? Are you playing at? Or is this the weird animal that you want to show me? Oh, I've seen those with that. Yeah, I've drawn those. They're like a like a hybrid of zebra slash or slash. I don't know, Samsung. Jordan, last meeting, where's the apple? What's that? Oh, the landscape wash class. You gonna get in
No,
there?
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, you're gonna be doing some kind of card in there or something? Like a
We're
futuristic.
still gotta work on that, the little,
Is that when you're thinking of taking? The wash landscape? Oh, cool,
Yeah.
very cool. Oh yeah, those are fantastic. They look like something out of, if you spruced them up, they look like they were an Avatar or something. Yeah, gotta give them a mohawk and color them different and look awesome. You want one? Yeah, they're awesome looking. What? It's a genetically modified zebra.
wow,
I
that's a
think.
cool face.
That'd be my guess. They're so cool. I love them. He's so funny. You really missed your calling. You need to work in a zoo. You need to work.
Where's this from? Where's this taken?
Well, we had a lady in here that I told you, used to corral all the animals at the zoo. She was feisty, man. She was funky. She works at Whole Foods now, but I'm here and I always see her, run into her. But she worked in all that in the zoo for 20 years and took care of the animals and had to get them back in their pens when they weren't supposed to. She had crazy stories. You're like, oh, I know Krista would just love to have that job. I told her, that's a lot of schooling, man, to deal with animals like that. You can't just go in and start playing around with a big cat. Eat you up, literally. Things are crazy. Yeah, seems like it. Yeah, get over there and business questions, review questions, all kinds of stuff. What was that?
So that's quite the tangent you went on there with the how you see the Gouache paintings.
Oh, yeah, she's there, I'll end up over in left field.
Where am I?
Yeah, Captain Non Sequitur, or as Eric would say. You know that when you call me that. You should have a shirt or a hat or all over. I usually can somehow weave it back in somehow, but sometimes I'll catch myself about 10 minutes later. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah. That's funny.
I couldn't do that.
Okay, you ready?
Oh.
He's like wolfing down a salad. Okay, we're coming back.
Mike was gonna pick up the crumbling.
Okay. Okay, now this one is, when I first started doing gouache when I was younger, I did a lot of black, white, and orange, and black, white, and green, and Tom Lovell, Andrew Loomis. A lot of those guys painted these really cool monochrome type painting illustrations because I think the color reproduction at the time was kind of weak, and so they kind of did a little bit of colors, like 3-color, instead of doing all this variety of color stuff. But I always got a kick out of them, especially Cornwell stuff. I thought was really cool, and so I thought I would do a little one of those. This is from one of his pirate pieces, and I just thought it was kind of a cool head, and it was a profile, and it was kind of, again, black, white, and orange makes kind of a raw sienna looking type warmer gray than just black and white.
Did you show the reference though, Jeff?
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Thanks for reminding me. So this is the reference, and again, it's a close-up I just scanned off of a book I had that had it's hard to find a big image of this, and it was I think it was a Brandywine type book or something. It had a lot of N.C. Wythe in it, and people like that, and Howard Pyle and Cornwell, and this just happened to be I haven't seen that image very big in many books, so I thought, oh, that's cool. I was looking for it and couldn't find it, and I found the book today and thought, oh, I'm going to paint one of those. I just try to paint things that are fun for me too, because I figure if I'm having fun, you guys are going to learn a lot. If I'm kind of not liking what I'm doing or not enjoying it, then it's going to come across in my education, and you're not going to get the full passion and fun of the project. So I try to pick things that are of interest to me, and hopefully they'll be also of interest to you. But you know, these Friday night things is kind of fun because we're just having fun. We're going to come in and mess around and show you kind of what, you know, some of the stuff that we do and what we know, and in hopes that maybe someday you end up in a class or something. And again, I'll try to minimize the sales pitching on the online and stuff. I mean, I know a lot of you guys are already on it and probably liking it. I would imagine it's a great program, but you know, just enjoy. Okay, so let's start with a stain on this one, but I'm going to start with a gray stain, and I'm going to start with a warm gray stain. So what I'm going to do is take black, orange, and white and mix them together to make a gray. Well, I've already got a puddle of gray here, so I'm going to actually borrow some of that, and then I'm going to put a little black in it, and then I'm going to put a little orange in it. Now it's a little orangey for me, but I think it'll work. So let's just give that a shot. So what I'm going to do is just, you can wet the board ahead of time, but on these small heads I don't really do that. On the big heads I do. Like if it's and again, gouache doesn't really want to paint big. It's not a big, you know, it's hard to cover large areas with it. So I've seen people do it. It's just hard to do. So I prefer it for smaller paintings, personally. But you'll see someone like Gordon Snidow or some of these guys that do it in fine art where they'll do like a 30 by 40 or something like that of a gouache. It's kind of an expensive medium to paint that big in because the tubes are so small and it doesn't cover thick very easy. So you end up blowing through a lot of paint on bigger efforts. So if you're not worried about it, then don't worry about it. Go for it. And again, I'm going to try some. I've tried some pretty big ones for fine art stuff. That was really fun. So that stain wants to dry a little bit, so we'll just kind of blow on it. And yeah.
We had a couple of good questions from before.
Okay, what do we got?
Sebastian Wolf is saying, in the online classes you mentioned sculpting as a great aid for learning and understanding 3D form.
Uh-huh.
How would you recommend a beginner student approach sculpting in relation to painting and drawing?
Well, sculpting is so nice because it's an infinite number of drawings that you have to think about when you're sculpting because you're doing 360 of an object. So if you're sculpting a head, it's like sculpting every angle. It's like drawing every angle of the head. So you get so much more, just a lot more growth, it seems like, and three-dimensional appreciation for form when you're trying to do it that way. So, you know, you could get in a sculpting class or just get some clay and get some armature. You know, you can self-educate in sculpting pretty good. It's not as bad, it seems like, as painting. But I've done a lot of it. We used to have some really good sculpting teachers at the atelier here over the years, and we don't have any at present because our facility right now is a little bit smaller than the old one that we had, and it's so messy and hard for storage. You know, like you have to have, you know, racks for storing it and all this kind of stuff, and we just don't have that right now. So we don't have presently a lot of sculpting classes or any at this point. I don't know if I'll instigate it again. I would like to, but again, finding the teachers that are of the caliber that we would like, and since I'm not really capable of training them, I mean, I'm a good sculptor, but I wouldn't say that I would probably teach it extensively. You know, I don't know how we'll do that, but sculpting is a wonderful way to learn to appreciate three-dimensional form. It's great for, I like, some of the funnest stuff that I did with it, or the most enjoyable, was conceptual sculpting, like sculpting small maquettes of a Frazetta. I remember I did the Centaur, the Moon Maiden one, and I did a real painterly version of that, but it took me a long, I mean, I took about 20 or probably 30 maybe sculpting classes over the years, maybe more, with 4 or 5 different teachers. And it's a wonderful I mean, I contemplated on doing it professionally for a while. I really love it, but I'm not wired quite as three-dimensional as I am able to do, take a two-dimensional image on a flat surface and make it look three-dimensional. And some people are just naturally wired one way or the other, and they have a very difficult time moving between those two disciplines. We had a great sculpting teacher, but he wasn't a very good draftsman. But man, you give that guy some clay and he would just bang out the coolest stuff like in no time flat. But yet he couldn't really do it on a flat surface at all. He had a very difficult time. So he was just wired incredibly 3D. And so, you know, I think with sculpting as part of your repertoire for training is good, I think, a little later, because a lot of times you're going to be wanting to use most of your time and money and resources probably for painting and drawing classes, and then the sculpting will be like a luxurious style of training that you implement later when you're a little bit, maybe as you start making some money at it, you can invest back in doing some sculpting on the tail end a little bit. But it really depends. If you have a great passion for it, then you might want to go to like the Florence Academy or somewhere like that that has a really good program. I know we had an artist, Alicia Ponzio, that trained with us when she was really early on for about 5 to 6 years. And then she later went to the Florence Academy, and she's just a phenomenal sculpting talent. I mean, I've seen her work recently, and it's just incredibly awesome. I mean, so we didn't really offer sculpting to that level, so she ultimately left and went to that program, and it did really good for her. So I think they probably have a really good program. So you can find, I mean, everybody's going to be able to move to Florence, obviously, but there's classes all over the place. You just got to look at, and if you just want to use tools and certain things, you can usually pick it up at a community college or something, just a class, and kind of self-educate yourself in it. We may do a little bit on the online, but I don't know. I don't know how much. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I enjoy doing it myself. I know that, just for fun. It's just another way to stretch your brain and exercise your dexterity and your design sense. So I'm a big fan of it.
Richard Neely would like to know, can you give an example of a weekly study schedule to help process all the info and lessons on the online site? Is there an example somewhere on the site?
Not yet. It's one that we're working on. I'm working on a master plan for navigating it depending on the curriculum or the direction you want to go in. So ultimately we'll have a curriculum for concepting, a curriculum for illustration, a curriculum for fine art, a curriculum for all these different things, and it will tailor the percentages of classes and time spent on them based on what I have learned over the years of doing it, training people. So that's something I want to address for sure, and it's something I've been thinking a great deal about. But like everything that we do, I want to do it very carefully and very thoroughly, and I don't just want to slap stuff out there and just try to get it out as quick as possible. I want to take my time and make sure that it has a lot of quality behind it and integrity. So, but yeah, I've been thinking about it, and we did do a program like at the school a couple years ago. There were a lot of kids that were trying to navigate our curriculum, and our curriculum was comprised of about 80 different classes that run throughout the years. Some run all the time, some run every couple years, and people were having a very hard time figuring out how many times they were supposed to take something, what they were supposed to take first, second, third. And so I created a kind of a certificate program that wasn't accredited by the government or anything, nor was it intended to be. But it was just simply a suggestion of how many times you would take head drawing, figure drawing, quick sketch, in what order, and then you had electives you could choose from. And basically what was like a pass-fail type program where people could monitor their progress through pass and fail, because I had no interest in grading them, because I don't believe in it, as a way to motivate people. So they would come in and they would take the classes that were required for that program, and then they would pick their from a list of electives that they could take that would, get progressively more complicated. And it was a really cool program, but what I found would happen is people would come to the school, be kind of lost in the beginning, but very quickly figure out where their weaknesses were, and then figure out how to navigate it on their own, and they really didn't need the program after about a year. So I think we had a handful of people that went through and actually finished it, but most people found that after a short period of time, they could navigate the classes on their own. They understood the concept, and they were able to design their own curriculum, which is what I always kind of thought should happen. But that being said, the guts of that particular program were quite extensive and pretty interesting, and I spent a long time figuring it out. So that will be probably the basis of part of the curriculum navigation system that will ultimately be put together for the online school. I just have to go back, revisit it, revamp it, change it a little bit, and then re-deliver it as far as what's going on online. But that's coming up probably in the next 6 months or so, and the content will be releasing one phase a month from here on out, probably, which is 15 hours of content per month. So right now we're at about 400 hours, maybe, close to going on 500. We have a couple hundred backed up, 100 hours of content. So ultimately, the goal is to get all the curriculum online and fleshed out even better than it is at the school would be my goal. Better meaning more thorough, more particular, more specific, looking at what worked and didn't work with certain classes, what handouts should be modified, which ones could be improved. And so basically going back through our whole program that's been developed over the last 22 years and making it even more clear to the individual, easier to navigate. And so that's where we're heading kind of with everything.
Got a good question from my chum. When the paint dries, how much does it affect the value? And when you plan to reactivate or blend certain areas later, do you do anything to compensate ahead of time, like laying colors down darker?
That's a really good question and very poignant for gouache. Gouache is a medium that does alter its characteristics as it dries. So usually your darks will dry slightly lighter and your lights will dry slightly darker. So that's the easiest way to think of it. And if you're off so far that it's really bugging you, you're probably off way too far. Because you usually have a little bit of wiggle room with your values where they can change a little bit without causing too much collateral damage. So if you're off so far that you're noticing that and it's really bugging you, it usually means your value judgment, it needs some work. And that would probably be best rectified in charcoal drawing or graphite drawing than it would be in painting. Or it could be rectified in painting, but you would probably better your value control in situations, monochrome situations and stuff like that. So, yeah, sometimes I'll premeditate moves in oil a lot more than in gouache, because in oil I'm always thinking about, okay, if I put this color down correctly, like Schmidt or someone tells me to, which does make sense, try to put everything, look at something, judge it, and put it down correctly the first time. Well, that's all fine and dandy until it doesn't work. Like say you put down a color and it is the right value and it is the right color for what you see, but now you have to blend it. And you see you have a color next to it on left and right side, and when you go to blend it, what's going to happen? It's going to get compromised. So now that value is going to be either too light, too this, too that, and now you're going to have to go back and adjust it. So it was right at one point, but it's not going to stay right, chances are. And so what you can do is premeditate the move and say, okay, I'm going to put this color here, and then I know I'm putting that color there, it's already there, and I'm going to put this one next to it. I should probably make it a little more saturated so that when I blend it with the one to the left, it's then going to mute it a little bit, and it's going to come down and chroma it to where I want it to be. So now you're thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, and that makes you a faster painter, a more efficient painter. But in order to do that, you just have to have an incredible ability, or a really good ability to understand where you're going, where you want to be, and what's happening in that equation. So it is a challenging way to work, but it is one that I don't see often mentioned in almost any book on painting. I do it all the time, and I've learned to do it, and it's made me a really fast painter, or the illusion of fast, I guess you could say, and I like working that way. And so, but it does require that your brain is always thinking 4 or 5 steps ahead of itself. So it's like playing chess with yourself, and you just have to have a certain mindset for that, or maybe cultivate it through painting, but you have to be aware of it in order to cultivate it. And a lot of people just, they blunder their way through paintings, or they try to be too perfect on their paintings all the way through, and then they get frustrated when they go to blend and it's wrong, and then you got to go chase it the other direction. And there's going to be a fair amount of that no matter who or what technique you employ, but you can become really efficient through discipline and through focus. So I would always encourage students to try to think about those concepts when you're painting. I know that was, I think I answered your question, and if I didn't, I apologize, but that's kind of, I think, what you were talking about. But the drying different colors, drying differently, this and that, it's not that dissimilar from watercolor and trying to learn which colors are transparent, which ones go on top of each other well, which ones actually make them more vibrant or more dingy. And that's just something you have to kind of struggle through and paint a lot to learn that. There's no easy way to learn that. So I'm going through on this little guy, and I'm just basically mixing black, white, and a little bit of orange with my grays to make them a little warmer than normal, than if I was just using ivory, black, and white as my gray transitions. It wouldn't work as good. So that's what I'm kind of doing to try to mimic what I'm seeing up there.
NTHN Hansen would like to know, do you recommend reading books on lives of the masters, like Sargent?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, anything that can lend insight into this trials and tribulations of being a professional painter from some of the best painters throughout history. I have an old Sargent book. I can't remember the title of it, but it's like, you know, lots of notes written by his students, and they're really great, and little tidbits on how he worked and insights into, you know, what was going on in the studio and all that kind of stuff. And it just gives you, it also gives you an appreciation and understanding that these people were just people. They're very disciplined people that were well trained, but they're no different than you and I. And so a lot of times you put these people up on these pedestals as if they were gods or something, and were not human. And some of them did actually, you know, to me, display characteristics that were not so human-like. And I would say guys like Muka, you know, it's hard to fathom the sheer amount of work the guy did, as well as the magnitude of it, as well as the proficiency of his shapes and his design and his consistency, and it just almost seems like it's otherworldly how good he was. But I think through strong discipline, good training, and dreaming big and executing consistently, one could very easily, now I wouldn't say very easily, one could accomplish those levels, but it would require a life fully engaged life, personality, style, like Robert Henri mentions in the Art Spirit. Great art is a great life lived. It's working at the highest level of your faculties at all times is what produces a great art and a great life of an artist that's great like that. So it's a more of a discipline of personality and a personality type that's cultivated through art that would allow you to get to that level. And that then goes into more the more philosophical bend or aspects of painting. When you get into things like Robert Henri, you get into really philosophy. You get into how you structure your life, how you think. You get into meditation. You get into all these things that are disciplines that people use in religious pursuits, but somehow you don't think of art as a pursuit like that. But it requires the same discipline of like a Shaolin monk or a black belt or a very disciplined martial artist, where training and regimen and procedure and respect and all those things are wrapped into the process of learning that art, and that's where the great artists are. They're in that realm. So at some point you do have to delve into philosophy and into self-motivational type stuff and discipline and focus, and wrap that into your art training so that you can become hyper-focused, hyper-vigilant, really good at these things that aren't normally things that we learn in college or high school or sometimes life. It even takes a long time to beat in India. So anyway, that's where we'll kind of venture occasionally into those kind of realms, because art kind of ends up there sooner or later. Just straight technical proficiency for technical proficiency's sake is kind of dead and devoid of soul. So we need to put the soul back into it. And that's going to get into some philosophy and stuff, but cool. So again, that head's getting kind of, has a nice little kind of gray-brown kind of look to it, which is that warmth of the cat orange going into the black and white, and creating, again, what I see on the painting in front of me is kind of an that kind of feel to the grays rather than just a dead gray. Okay. I'm going in and just, again, covering my painting as quickly and efficiently as possible. When I say quickly, I'm not like going after it with reckless abandon and trying to just throw everything but the kitchen sink at it. I'm just trying to inch my way through it and get it laid in, and then I'll start doing some finessing stuff in a minute. But yeah, really fun. God, it's pure pleasure doing these things. It's almost, got to pinch yourself every once in a while, because it's fun to do. So good questions you guys are asking, by the way. Very, very, very good. Very, well thought out. So thanks for doing that. It helps the time go by, and it's nice to kind of food for thought. It makes me think about, when I have to answer those things, I have to think about, how I structure my own time. Am I doing that good? Am I letting that slack? So by using you guys for accountability, I can actually keep myself more disciplined as well. And the longer you get into this stuff, the more you realize that, things slip every once in a while. You kind of get lazy, you forget certain things, or you just, you should be in life class, but you don't get in as much as you should, or all these things that can make your eye and hand get a little bit complacent and kind of, lazy, for lack of a better way to put it.
A question from Pentimenti. Is this broadcast going to be archived?
Yeah, it won't for the public, but it will on the online school. So ultimately, all these will go into some archiving system that if you're on that program, you can go back and refer to them. But when we first do them, we'll keep them up for a couple days or maybe a week. But ultimately, they'll go into an archiving system in our online program that people can refer back to later. If they're, hopefully they'll be worth that. They're just kind of the it'd be nice to have a little bit. We'll keep working on improving the way we're filming them, but right now it is kind of a little bit wonky in areas, but it's okay. It is what it is. I mean, it's a little, it's nice, portable little setup to be able to kind of get this to you guys. Yeah. So I'm doing a little bit of drapery. I'm not going to get too caught up in it because I don't want to open it up into a drapery study as much. But we'll see. I mean, I have some time, so we may really get through some of that drapery. His drapery is really quite loose. I mean, it's well understood. The anatomical integrity of his folds is very present. And meaning that, there's 7 key folds, and most folds are a combination of one of those 7 folds, and they lock and interlock in a very logical manner, very similar to anatomy. And so once you understand those folds, you can quickly decipher what kind of fold it is, and then you utilize your knowledge of that fold to design it better, just like anatomy. So we do it very similar. So I might want to get some of the orange of that kind of head wrap in there that, to try to get the tone set a little bit for that, just so that it kind of, because it's going to make those grays look even quite different. As you see, when you watch me put this in, you'll see they'll come alive a little bit, or the temperament of them will change. And so a lot of times when you have bright color or chroma in an area of a painting, you want to establish a little note of that pretty early on, because it helps to set the tone for how gray certain areas are, how gray they appear. Because again, all color is relative, and it's going to relate to areas. As you punch up certain areas, it's going to make other areas look gray, it's going to make other areas go dead. And you kind of want to get that going pretty early, so you can kind of see what's going on with the color harmony of the piece. Again, your palette always looks good. I mean, you look over at your palette and it always looks nice, but up on the painting it may not look so nice. So you always want to kind of get that whole picture going. And so I neglected to get that orange in, and I realized, hey, I should probably get that in to see what those grays are looking like a little bit more. If they're actually holding together as good as I think, or maybe I need some work or something. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going around the top, the front here. Some little white shapes that on it. I'm just leaving right now the white of the actual board. And there's it seems like a little, in that orange, it kind of gets a little ochre-y or something. And I don't think he's using yellow ochre, but it seems like the orange may have some black in it. Maybe that's it. That's creating that kind of dingier look to it. I don't know why I like it so much, but I've always had an affinity for those his vignette paintings that are done like that. And he was such a good vignetter. I mean, in my opinion, probably one of the best vignetters I've ever seen. Meaning, his ability to prematurely end a composition in an attractive way. He always finds a really cool cutoff. He's kind of like Frazetta that way, where Frazetta always picks a great pose. I mean, he's never going to paint a boring pose. He's always going to pick like the most dynamic version of whatever pose that he has the person doing. And you know, by the same effect or same token, Cornwell always seems to pick the best places to cut a vignette at. You know, like find some really cool way to cut it and stop it in an attractive manner. And you can learn a lot about design by looking at how artists do that, you know. He also does great ears. I think Cornwell's ears are just phenomenal. They're like little clay ears. They're just so cool. They're not anatomically ridiculously fleshed out, but they're very Bridgman in their construction. As are his hands are too. So I see a lot of Bridgman in Cornwell. You know, a lot of his design shapes and the way he designs stuff reminds me a lot of Bridgman stuff. Would have loved to have seen Bridgman paint. I don't really think he ever did, or at least I never saw any of them, which is really odd. I mean, to me, you know, really drawing is simply a stepping stone to painting, and although I love it as much as painting in some regards, and some even more so, it really is not a finished. It's not an end to anything. It's just a stepping stone to get to painting at a high level. So, why, you know, how someone could donate their whole life to like the study of anatomy but never do anything as far as like finished paintings, or it seems always odd to me. But maybe he did. Maybe I just haven't seen him or something. I don't know. But I really haven't stumbled across any yet. You know, so it fascinates me a little bit to wonder why he didn't do that. But he was a hell of an anatomy teacher, that's for sure. And as far as functional anatomy, probably one of the best for artists ever. But if you want to see clean Bridgman, then, or not Bridgman, yeah, Bridgman, just go to Frazetta. He's really, like, in my opinion, he took what Bridgman did so well and took it the full distance, you know, took it into paint and took it into his inks and took it into his work and did with it what it was probably intended to do. So if you want to kind of cross-reference your Bridgman with Frazetta, it's a very good pairing for better understanding what he's trying to get across or what he was trying to say with what he was teaching people. Okay, plugging along, just kind of having fun. Scanning, identifying, predicting, deciding, executing. Remember the whole SIPD thing. It's a really good, handy thing to think about when you're problem solving visually. So I'm going to the drapery. I notice there's a little outline around some of the drapery. You'll occasionally see Cornwell put in a very powerful outline around a shape, which is highly linear. It's odd. You know, it's really not... yeah, it's just odd. It's almost more graphic. But I think when he gravitated to doing murals, he kind of adopted more of that graphic outlining effect to get the readability of these large panels he was working on. Very much like, again, you know, he was very much influenced by, oh man, what's his name? What's the one painter that he studied with in Europe and over in England? Frank Brangwyn. Brangwyn. So Brangwyn was like heavily influenced him on his. I couldn't believe I couldn't think of that. Brangwyn's one of those guys that I could have easily done a bunch of gouache studies of. I just don't have an endless amount of reference of his stuff because it's kind of hard to find. His books are really expensive if you can find them. I've got a few on him, but nothing. I don't have a ridiculous library on Brangwyn. But Brangwyn was really a great painter and a great composer. Heavily influenced Cornwell's style, especially when he did murals. Almost exact. I mean, Cornwell lifted so much from him, but did it really well. You know, I have a couple little gouache comps. I own a couple Cornwell stuff, you know, and the comps that he did for the L.A. County Museum. I have those in my studio, and they're really cool. He was a great gouache painter, Cornwell. Really good. He usually used them for his preliminary designs for his larger paintings. Sometimes, like when he submitted to get that job for the LA County Museum, these are the gouaches that he submitted to get that. So they were really cool, extremely neat. Yeah, just really nice. At some point, I'll film them or put them on at one of the podcasts or something and let you guys see them. But they're nice, nice stuff. To me, Cornwell's pretty unsung as far as he's an unsung hero of. He just hasn't got his full deserve for how good he is as far as collectability, like as far as collectors that collect his work. I think he's way undervalued, I mean, incredibly undervalued as a painter. But I think, give it another 50 years, 100 years, and you're going to see him probably really being up there with Rockwell, and he really deserves to be, in my opinion. Okay. Is it 10? Okay, so I'm actually, if you guys have the time, I mean, do you have a little bit of time? Do you want to hang for a little? I'm going to go ahead and paint ahead on this a little bit for another 20 minutes or so, because I think I got a little bit of a late start. If you want to stay tuned, I'll continue to paint for a while. I know some of you might be tuning in from far away, and maybe it's too late, but I hope not. But anyway, yeah, let me just, work through this a little bit longer, if you don't mind. I'm happy to. And then we'll go from there. So I'm just going in, soft blending my edges now because I've got it all tiled out. I think it's looking pretty good. But now these tiles need to be blended. So I'm going in without an airbrush, right? I'm just going in manually. And I'm looking at the tiles, and I'm looking at each edge of the tile and asking myself, does that want to stay the same? Does it want to, usually you blend at least one of the four edges on a tile, but not always. Sometimes you like that tile look, and if you've been dropping them in really strategically and very nice, sometimes you don't need to do that. You can just get away with leaving the tiles. I like that chunky look, and that's what Cornwell's painting looks like. It's very chunky, this particular one. So I like that chunkiness of the tiles almost emulates the thickness of his paint application. But now I'm going in and doing a little bit, still leaving the tiling in, kind of look at that, going around the shape. Going around the hands. Blending out some of the edges. Going around the head wrap and also the drapery and a little bit of the hair. Maybe down here, do a water glaze over that little section in the jaw. Go in some of the drapery.
Are you coming back for next check? Oh, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I live here.
So again, just a little too pink or too much orange in there. So I might go in with just straight white and just kind of use that as underpainting. And it's kind of thick, and put in a little bit thicker white like that. And again, it's kind of emulating the way that he's painting with that very thick. So I'm using the I'm using the gouache a little bit more like oil on this one. Pushing it a little thicker than I would normally. The little white notes that are in the actual up here, I put a little bit of orange in it because they don't look really totally white. They look more have a little bit of value to them. So I'm going to put a little of that in and go around, really replace that white with, again, just some little calligraphic shapes like that. There's a little dark halo around the cap, again, kind of in that style of his more graphic
Overall,
way that he does sometimes do that. Not always, but sometimes you'll see him do that, especially in these ones, these black, white, and orange ones. Blow that edge. That edge really blows out quite a bit, right? It's a little lost edge right there. Not totally lost, but more than I have it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, in the ear, there's some little shapes that need to be addressed. Any questions coming in or anything, Jeff? You're doing great over there on the
Yeah, not yet.
look at the camera a little bit, so that's good. So going back into the hand and outlining, because it got a little bit gooey in there as I was softening, over softening stuff. So now I'm going back and reaffirming some of the little hard edges around it. And again, it has that nice sculptural Bridgman feel to it, which is like a block of hand rather than tendons and knuckles and veins and all the subtle stuff. But it does have the subtlety. I mean, there is some amazingly subtle little indications of the fingers in there, how they interact. So it's not like he's phoning it in at all. It's just a really beautiful clenched fist that, again, is very reminiscent of how Bridgman blocks them in rather than creating unnecessary rendering of an area. Very smart. It's smart drawing is what it is, smart painting. Picking your battles. Frazetta was really good at it too. If he didn't want you looking at it, then it wasn't going to be painted. I wouldn't say it was painted sloppy, but it wasn't, he just didn't want you looking at it, so he wasn't going to, render the crap out of it or anything like that. Okay, so the eye here inside of the socket got a little bit away from me there, so now I just got that back. Where the upper lid inserts into the bone, I just got that back. That's good. That was missing. The dark shadow coming off the wing of the nostril into the cheek, and there's a strong, sharp cast shadow down below it, and then the nostril interacts with the actual front plane of the nose, and the beard or mustache, kind of interacts as well like that. So that cleaned it up quite a bit. There's a little dry brush off the front of his mustache. It's kind of cool. There's a white highlight right in there I'm missing, which actually has some, I can't really get the brush stroke the way he has it, but there's a little cha-chings that are the hot spots in the painting, around the earring, some of the little areas of the ear. The tip of the finger for some reason got a little light one on. I don't know what that's all about, but back behind the ear, it's a little lighter like that.
We have a question that.
What's that?
We have a question that may or may not have been answered before, but do you ever do any digital painting, or is the whole process unappealing to you?
No, I don't do a lot of digital right now. I love the idea of it. I can't wait to do it. It's another medium, just like so many others that I've learned over the years, that I want to give it the time and the respect that it deserves for me to do it properly when the time's right. But right now, I find that the traditional stuff is way more important to get out there, and way more important because there's a lot of people that need it and don't have access to it. And it really is the key to everything. So I spent more time lately just making sure that I'm doing all this stuff, and then once I get some free time, I'll venture into the digital, just like I have with so many other mediums in the past, and attempt to get good at that. But right now, I just have a fun time looking at really good stuff that's being done by the people out there, just like they probably enjoy seeing some of the stuff that some of the more traditional guys are doing, I would imagine. You always kind of want to be doing what you're not doing, so it's like, oh, I want to go do that because it looks so cool, and it's true. But for me, yeah, I'm too busy right now just doing this, keeping this stuff at a high level, and don't think I want to add yet another medium on right at this particular juncture, but I will.
Ginseng wants to know, what advice would you have for developing discipline as a beginner?
Well, discipline, if you're looking at discipline as far as like what, the discipline to actually go into a drawing class or make sure you show up or making sure that you draw every day. Those are things that are going to be more personal and are probably going to be addressed more from the standpoint of, what kind of things in your life have you done that have required the discipline and the focus and the wherewithal that your training in art's going to require. And if you don't have anything that you can think of, try to grab onto whatever it is that you can. Okay, I was good at math, or I was disciplined in school in this way. I always showed up for band, or I was on a sports team and I always made sure I made practice and I loved doing that. Anything that you can remember doing that required lots of discipline, focus, follow through, daily practice will help you to, basically gear that towards your training in your art in a similar manner. And if for some reason you haven't done anything like that, then it's time to start learning that, because it's going to be key to anything in your life that's going to be successful. I don't care whether it's a relationship or it's your marriage or it's your either some other career. You're going to have to get that sooner or later. So self-motivation is a gift, but it's one that if you really love art, it really shouldn't take that much for you to want to sit down and do it. And if it does, it may not be for you. If it's that hard for you to, and I'm not saying this is your situation, but if it's that hard for somebody to want to train, then they may be doing art for the wrong reasons or whatever. But most of the time it just comes down to good old-fashioned trying and failing and picking yourself back up and getting back at it and not beating yourself up about it, but respecting the fact that it's a difficult thing to learn to do and that you need to spend time, money, and energy to learn how to do it, just like anything else. And if you set the right goals and you fall through, you're going to get good. The thing that you don't want to do is do the wrong things, pick up bad habits, and later have to have somebody incredibly good remove those habits for you. Because that's hard to find, and it's hard to find anyone that will even do that for you. So if you self-train for too long without knowing what you're training and who you're training from, it's a very good opportunity or a very good likeliness that you might develop some extremely bad habits that need to be removed at some point, and that's just hard to do. So we want to try to prevent that from happening if possible.
We have a question from Michael Vaughn. Will you offer any art theory classes?
Art theory, I don't know how qualified I am to really do them, but we may do something. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think a lot about the stuff that I've been talking about, and I believe that's theory. It depends on whether you're talking about like abstract expressionist type theory stuff, where really art becomes more driven by psychological motivations rather than actually execution. And I don't really plan on doing a lot of that, but as far as trying to get soulfulness into your work and trying to push past just raw technical skill into more soulful painting, yes, for sure, because that's what I'm trying to accomplish in my own work, and I think that's what every artist ultimately is attempting to do, is to not just be a technician, but be an insightful technician that actually has something to say that's very deep and meaningful. And but that doesn't have to be done in some weird manner. It could just be done by doing a beautiful composition or a beautiful color harmony or things like that. So that being said, I think this is going to wrap up tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was just kind of a glimpse into master studies. And what I would encourage you to do in the future is start doing these. Do them in your sketchbook. Pick an artist that you really love and spend a month with that artist intimately doing tons of studies. Hand studies, drapery studies, head studies, nose studies, feature studies. And just tap it out until you burn out on that artist and then go to the next one. And whatever you were meant to learn from that artist, you will most likely retain as you move on to other ones, whether it's Frazetta's power or Cornwell's bravura brushwork or Leyendecker's masterful design of everything. You're going to pick up little bits and pieces of that, and that's ultimately going to become the fabric of who you are as an artist. And that is what we're after, not after, again, becoming any one of these artists, but becoming you through them. And they're the ones that are leading you by, they've already accomplished their vision. They're complete artists. Frazetta was a complete artist. Cornwell was a complete artist. Leyendecker was a complete artist. These are artists that fulfilled their destiny as a great artist and owned authentically their technique. And that's what we want to do. But we don't want to own their technique. We want to own our own technique. We're going to help. They're going to help us to find that. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed. Tune in in a couple weeks, and I don't know what we're doing next, but we'll do something cool. So I hope you enjoyed. Take care. Oh. Bye. I need something.
You need to get Jeff a kush tush. that teal green thing.
Probably is, yeah. Thanks for working the camera a little bit there too.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, they're so tiny.
They came out pretty nice though. Not too bad. I mean, for this little podunky camera. I mean, it looks like,
It's a little herky jerky, this thing, but.
Oh yeah, it's not like the ones we have at the studio. I'm trying to think of how we shut it off now. Did I shut it off?